We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for March 13th, 2017. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Jameson.
Here.
Councilmember Deuce.
Present.
Councilmember Toussaint. Here. Councilmember Zimmerman. Here. Mayor Richardson.
Here. Mr. Zimmerman, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Please stand. Cover your heart. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very first thing this evening, we have a presentation to make. It's one that's saved many lives over time. April is Organ Donation Recognition Month, and I'm going to read this resolution. Whereas organ, tissue, marrow, and blood donations are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need, and the spirit of giving and decision to donate are not restricted by age or medical condition. Whereas more than 118,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list. And on average, 22 people die each day while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs, and with the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic and African American communities. Whereas more than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California, and at any given time, 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors, and millions of lives each year are saved and healed by the donors of organs, tissues, marrow, and blood. Whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestines can save up to 8 lives, donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of up to 50 others, and a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. Whereas over 13 million Californians have signed up for the state-authorized Donate Life California Donor Registry to ensure their wishes to the organ, eye, and tissue donors are honored by signing up on the Donate Life California Donor Registry when applying for or renewing their driver's licenses or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of the National Donate Life Month, the month of April 2017 is hereby proclaimed DMV Donate Life California Month in the city of Solvang, and in doing so we encourage all Californians to check yes when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card, or by signing up at www.donatelifecalifornia.org or www.donevitacalifornia.org. Signed, Mayor Jim Richardson, City of Solvang. Is there a recipient for this?
Thank you. I will say very few words. Very good. Thank you. Not a politician. Thank you. My name is Scott Burns. I live in Santa Barbara. I give presentations to DMV, to high schools. 2 weeks ago, I was at the Goleta DMV, and I had a girl who spoke with me. She's also a Donate Life ambassador. She has a really nice story. I'll try to make it very quick instead of telling you my boring story. When she was 13, she went to the hospital. Actually, she went to the doctor. She thought she had a gallbladder or something that wasn't right. Went from the doctor to a hospital, to another hospital, to another hospital, where they realized she actually had a heart that was failing. Not what anyone was expecting, obviously. And she was very lucky that in about 3 weeks, it just happened that they found a heart for her. So now she's a 17-year-old, her name is Julia, 17-year-old girl going to Dos Pueblos High School and living a very good life. What you guys are doing is helping us. One of the reasons we go to the DMV is, while we're saying about 13 million people are signing up, 96% of the people that sign up at the DMV. So we want to keep the DMV happy, so we kind of do that. as an aside, most people don't like to go to the DMV. We're there and we try to make the people happy, so they like us. Now, the other thing I have for the people in the front, this is called swag, which I'd like to give out. And I'm going to just pass out some, and you guys can pass it out to make sure everybody gets some. Some more here. I want to make sure everybody gets. If anyone has any questions, here's the answer. If you don't have questions, I'm going to take off.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and it's a worthy thing for people to do. I think it's easy enough to do when you do re-up your driver's license, so to speak. Yeah. So thank you very much.
A lot of people are doing it. Thank you very much.
I think that when you were here last time that you shared your story, that you too are a recipient.
Yes, and I will spend 30 seconds on it. 1999, my kidney failed. It turned out I was taking a leave, not realizing I was allergic to it. It was 2003 when they realized that was the cause, and I quit taking a leave. But then still in 2011, my kidney failed again. 2012, I got on a waiting list. And last Memorial Day before last, while I was sailing on a friend's sailboat, the Santa Barbara Harbor Patrol came and got me at Santa Cruz Island, got me down to Cedar Sinai Hospital. 6 or 7 hours later, I went into pre-op and came out a couple hours after that with a kidney that is functioning. So I'm very happy and very, very lucky. There are probably 5 or 6 people in the valley that are on a waiting list, knowing we've got about 190, 200 in the county of Santa Barbara, and we've got like 400,000 people. So they're here, but mostly when you're on the waiting list, you're not really too active. Your health is not good. So they're not out promoting it, and they're always kind of worried about why did it happen to them? At least that's what happened to me. But thank you for the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
City Manager's report.
I'm just trying to follow up on last year when I brought up the vision, the council's vision. The request was to have a workshop once we have our new council seated. So I just want to make sure we still want to schedule a workshop for your city visioning exercise. Is that so?
I think so. Yeah, that-
Okay, we'll work on setting that up then.
That's it?
I'm busy being the clerk right now.
And he forgot the camera, but we'll let that.
Now we have public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the council. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. I have a speaker slip from Fred Koval. Says, agenda item 1. You don't have to speak, Fred, if you don't want to. I kind of, maybe yeah, there's another one from Bill Henderson's next, so.
Rainfall. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. Fred Cole, Solvang. I don't know, since the city clerk is not here, just pull the plug. The city council's not here, and I don't know if you got in your packets the current rainfall up to date.
We did.
Everybody did, good. And we did get a smidgen more on the 5th of March, and so the total is nice. I did take some pictures of over at Lake Chuma, and it shows that it's still got ways to go to get to the bottom of the spillway. And of course, on our cell phones, we get a chance to see, well, the rainfall in the reservoir that's by Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And on it, I know Councilman Jameson has it, but it says right now that for Lake Chuma, we're at 48.5%. 46% if the state is doing the counting. All right. The other item I have is the consent calendar, item 6D. Now, I thought, listening to the last and watching and being present at the last city council meeting, that there was a lot of talk there about what we really wanted, that this resolution doesn't really support the valley, doesn't really support our interests. And I noticed that 3 of the whereases in the resolution have been tweaked, one pretty close to the front and a couple at the very end. However, I thought it was really a sure directive, a slam dunk, that there would be a separate letter to the governor about our local issues, our little guys like us. And there is an attachment A that's referred to in the staff report. However, I couldn't find it. I don't know where it is. I thought that was going to be the letter to the governor. So I'm really much concerned that this thing is a one-way street for the South Coast. There's several inaccuracies in the whereases. They say no project water from the lake for the last 2 years. Well, what about the fact that the BNA ANA account, which has prior rights to all the water, that's the below Narrows account, above Narrows account, where per the Chinchaw Agreement in 1929, 1935, and then up to the present agreement, says that the river downstream can never be overdrafted. That's looked after by the parent district, San Ynez River Water Conservation District, Bruce Wales. So what did he do this past year? He took an extra couple of thousand acre feet beyond the BNA ANA account. And it didn't even make it all the way to Lompoc. It got to the first bridge and the surf bridge, and that was it. So the point is, I don't see enough in there that really substantiates the needs of this valley. And I just ask you to take a look at it and get it redone to make it more emphasis. Hey, we can't cow down to the South Coasters. We have to make our own, we've got to be our own people on this aspect. And so I just can encourage you to take a look at it, pull it, and do something better about it. I really feel strongly about this, and I hope everybody else there in the dais also is.
Thank you, Fred. Bill Henderson?
Good afternoon. Bill Henderson, Solvang. I have an issue that I want to bring before you that I lived in Santa Barbara for 30 years. I moved here about 6 years ago. I absolutely fell in love with this valley, and I am actually a representative in many ways of this valley to help people in our community. There is a company that is taking over this valley quietly, and you have kind of put a lid on large corporations coming into Solvang, whether it be, we've got grandfathered in the Subway sandwich shop, we've got Domino's, but we don't have large corporations. There's a $50 billion corporation right now hiding behind the guise of single individuals trying to make a living, and that is Uber. I'm sorry to say this, I don't know if anybody's brought it up, but I've been doing taxi and wine tours now for 4 years. The first year, nothing. Second year, nothing. Last year, maybe 3 cars. It has hit hard this winter. We are down 30% across the board when it comes to revenue from the year before. If not, I had to get rid of a driver this morning because he couldn't make his lease agreement. So he's gone. We've lost 2 or 3 other drivers that their livelihood is here. When we make money in your community, we spend money in your community. When Uber comes in from Santa Barbara, Lompoc, Santa Maria on this surge basis or whenever they feel like it, they make money in your community and they take the money away, okay? Most of that money goes to Uber. And then at a certain point in time, if that person who's doing an independent job might do it for 3 months, 4 months, it's not a career. We are career people trying to take care of you and represent this area. This is a big problem when we're up to 30, 40% of income lost and people losing their livelihoods. Here's the question. Let's say Uber continues to do what they're doing, and they do kill the taxi service. Let's just say there have been people that said, that's just the way life is. That's how it's going to go. That's how it changes. Because people from Orange County or San Francisco believe in the convenience that they have on a daily basis should be available here to them. But they're coming here to this quaint community to get away from that type of thing. They're coming here to enjoy being in the country, living the style of life we do. So here's what happens. An Uber driver comes, and this has happened, we have no longer any pickups for dinner. Uber comes in, picks people up to dinner, or to take them to a winery and drops them off. It's a one-way business. It's not a return business. It's not a business profile to service them as a guest to our community. It's just transportation. So what happens is they get taken to a dinner, Uber's gone. Guess who comes in to save the day? A taxi driver. An Uber driver takes somebody out to Demetria, $70 run, yes, but who's there to pick them up? Not an Uber driver, us. So let's say now that Uber shuts down the taxi industry in this town. Then what? All we have is Uber, who won't pick up those clients, who are not available. Right now, I just asked Shelby, he says, what's the problem? There's no Uber on the map. Right, there's no new Uber right now. So if you need a ride somewhere, where's your ride? I just think we need to do something about it. It's hurting people, hurting them hard. I don't know what else more to say, but there are other towns and cities in the United States that have banned Uber from small communities like this because of this reason. And I hurt. I mean, I'm going to survive. I'll do whatever I do. I have a Sprinter van. I do wine tours. I can rise above taxi. But other people can't. And they've been doing this for a long time. This is their livelihoods. It's your community, and you need them, and they need you. So.
Thank you, Bill. Do we want to look into that problem? Well, you know, at the airport, at LAX, they have a real problem, and they've put some ordinances in effect to protect the taxi drivers.
There have been cities across the United States for small communities like yours that have made those decisions. I'm going to try and meet with Joanne Hartman in regard to North County representation and see what I can do. People have already addressed the city of Santa Barbara, because there were 37 taxi companies in the city of Santa Barbara. I can't even tell you how hard they've been hit because of Uber. Well, now what's happening is those cities of Santa Maria and Santa Barbara are bleeding into ours. When Uber sees, let's say for an example, I'm sitting at the Maverick, one of the late places that stays open late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's 6 or 7 taxis representing 3 or 4 companies sitting there to have take people back. They brought them, they want to take them back. What happens is that Uber, I'm sitting in my Sprinter van watching this happen in front of me. I'm being hired for the night for some people at dinner at Garoppolo, but I'm watching all my taxi brethren sit there with no runs because Uber. What used to be 3 became 6. The other night there were 12 different Uber drivers at the Maverick, and one of my drivers, he made $20 that night. That's all he made, was $20 on a $250+ night. He no longer is with us because this morning I had to take his car away because he couldn't pay his lease. It's his livelihood, you know. And this is a small community. We can do this. We could say for Solvang, Buellton, San Ynez that Uber's not allowed. I mean, other cities have done it. We're not like Los Angeles. I understand Los Angeles, Chicago needing Uber, but we are being hurt really, really badly by it. All I can do is ask for your help.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Do we want to,
I haven't personally dealt with this issue. I know that in Pismo Beach, they just looked at it a little bit. Mr. Fleischman's on vacation. He'll be back next week. So perhaps what I can do, so we don't inordinately expand my pocketbook, is I'll get the materials from Mr. Fleischman and get back to you on what types of things you might be able to consider, and then you'd be able to decide if you wanted to have us work on the issue in the future.
would that come under the Planning Commission by any chance?
No, because it doesn't strike me as a zoning issue.
I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone else wish to speak? You've already had your bite at the apple, Fred.
I was just going to tell you how Uber got around it.
Got around what?
Oh, they just take their drivers from, you have an ordinance in the city, or they just bring the drivers in from the outside?
Can I ask a comment? Can I say something again?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Okay, so what we have to do on a yearly basis is we have to get a permit from the county, $40 for the permit. We have to go to a random drug testing accountability. We're signed up, all of us, for random drug testing. So every year we go through a drug test, that's over $100. Then we also have to go to the sheriff's department for an FBI background check. We're professional drivers paying professional fees and having oversight by transportation. These Uber drivers are not. We don't know if they have insurance. We don't know if they're taking drugs. There's no oversight for Ubers, okay? So the other business practices that Uber is doing is, as a large corporation, they're allotting somewhere towards 25% of their profit made during a quarter to litigation. So they know they're going to be sued. So they have money set aside to sue, to handle lawsuits. They also have money set aside to go to Congress and places like that to ask for, you know, being in these cities and not having to permit their drivers. Their drivers don't pay a thing. Uber's the one that reviews their driving record, says they're available to go on the streets, and then you, the client, first time seeing them, they've never gone through anybody else's review, drug test, do they have insurance, who are they? These,
Thank you, Bill.
you're welcome.
May I just make one comment?
Sure.
I know the appeal of the Uber situation is the cost.
Oh, yes,
They're much cheaper than having a taxi. And a lot of the young, that's what the young, I understand why, but that's what the appeal is, especially to young people. Yeah.
Seeing no other speakers, we'll come back to the council for the next item. Council comments and requests. Would you like to start, Ms. Jamison?
Sure. Well, I was reading the Sunday paper yesterday, and I got a big chuckle out of this article. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just tell you basically what it says. It says, California drenching raises new issue. A new issue. California is wrestling with a challenge that looked implausible during 5 years of drought. Where to store its water. So this is from the London Times. So they know we have a problem, but obviously California doesn't know we have a problem. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Deuce.
I just want to comment on the lake at 48 point something. It's covering the roadway at the little bridge now. It's kind of swampy around there, but you can't see the roadway anymore. So I'm gonna see when it hits 50 and see where it'll be my mark now at 50%, how far it goes up on the guardrail. Yeah, so maybe we can run down there with a can of spray paint or something like that and mark it with bright orange or something, and so
You'll
that'll
have the
be
50% mark.
huh?
You'll have the 50% mark.
We'll have the 50% mark.
You
yeah.
have to realize a lot of people don't even know what you're talking about.
I'm sure they don't.
You know, they don't understand that, they don't understand what the lake covers up. They don't understand what used to be there
Yeah.
before the lake.
Well, I'm sure a few people know Don Pratt. And they used to live out there on the island before it was an island. And his mom would send him down on the bridge to go steelhead fishing with a pitchfork. Used the pitchfork because there's concrete underneath that bridge. And just made real good stabbing, and he'd head home with... huh? No, I don't think Don's part Indian, but so anyway, that's all my comment.
Mr. Toussaint?
No comments.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No comment tonight. Thank you.
And I as well have no comment. On to the next item. Correspondence received, we don't have any, well, we did too. We have one letter from Nancy Orchard regarding the water rates.
I think there's one in your packet also from the school fundraising, the funds you gave to the school SAM project.
Yes, I think everybody should be aware of that letter. our education system is short-funded, and bless their hearts, the Solvang School has raised funds to provide music and visual arts and drama in grades kindergarten through sixth. And it's and the last line in the letter says, the Solvang School Education Foundation also coordinates after-school academy, which includes courses in dance, fine arts, music, Spanish, and knitting. Solvang School is the only public elementary school in the valley that provides fully integrated music and art classes, and that's every student in the school goes through some of those classes. And we, as a city, donated $4,000 last year to them to proceed with that, and I expect that they're going to ask for another grant this year. So I just want you to know that some of the stuff that we do, some of the profits we make in the city from our tourists go to things like this, and it's important to understand that. Any comments?
Well, I'll make a comment. The young lady, Padfield, she's a product of this program. The little gal that was in the competition in Santa Barbara,
Oh, yeah.
and she did very, very well. But she's a product of this program, so.
It's fantastic stuff. We got to do something about PT now in the elementary schools. They don't get enough recess. You know.
Oh.
On to approval of the agenda. Does anybody want to swap any of the agenda items around? Seeing none, we'll go on. Any additions, corrections, or deletions to the council minutes of February 27th? And if not, can I have a motion accepting?
I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, passed 5-0. On to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull any of the consent items?
I'd like to pull and table D and give it another week to review it. Yeah, D.
6D. Anything else?
E.
E? Okay. Do we want to discuss or have action
I just wanted to discuss E.
on? Okay. And on D?
I'm looking to see if we could table it until the next meeting and further review it, give it more time to, I'd like to review it again.
Well, then let's have a motion about 6D.
That's fine. Do you have comments that you'd like to make about it, to make
No.
it better?
No, not tonight, just because I want to keep things rolling. But
So Johnny, you had a lot of
Caught up
points the
on it.
last meeting. Did this new one reflect what? It
Sort
looked
of.
like it's a little on the light side.
A little bit. I
Yeah.
thought we were going to have a letter, not
So,
just a
I guess I think
resolution.
I'd like to see it stronger.
Well, then, is there a second?
I'll second that,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor of tabling item D till the next meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Passed 5-0. Okay, now, item 6E, just discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. Go right ahead.
See 6D.
I was writing down the other. Solvang Skip Mesa Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District, number 2004, resolution of initiation and intention.
Mr. Toussaint.
So I guess my only thing, I just wanted to kind of clarify some of the, let's see, where did my note go? So on the very last page, we got page 99,
Page 100?
page 100. It's talking about the city council could modify the conditions of approval to modify the scope of requirement for creation of a landscape maintenance district. A homeowners association, HOA, could be created. And then on the next page, it's talking about possibly hiring additional staff. So I just want to know I just want to fully wrap my head around this so I know what's going on here.
Sure, sure. Good evening, Mayor Richardson, council
Yes, go right
members. Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director. Yeah, so in the staff report, of course, this is the Solvang Mesa Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District. So it kind of goes back to the original conditions of approval for the project. Apparently, the developer did not want to have a homeowners association. And so through the conditions of approval and planning approval process, the city council approved a landscape and lighting maintenance district. So to maintain the landscaping and a few other items to pay for the electric bill for the streetlights and a few other things. But it's primarily the landscaping maintenance. But anyway, so that's how this maintenance district was created, rather than typically you would see something like this as a homeowners association. So some comments that we had had before from residents and questions from council members related to that, similar to your question, you know, why this maintenance district, why not a homeowners association? But the city attorney, and he can correct me if I've misunderstood, my understanding is that the city council could choose to amend the conditions of approval, basically after the fact, and have the creation of a homeowners association to take over the landscape maintenance. Now, the one exception to that is the detention basin that serves the development is down inside Hans Christian Andersen Park. So the city would still have to maintain that, because it's a city facility, it's not a specific facility of the of the development that they're responsible for. So I'm not really saying that clearly, sorry, but anyway, we'd still need to have a maintenance district where the residents pay for the maintenance of the detention basin. So it could be modified, so the homeowners association created to maintain all the landscaping, and then a small maintenance district to cover the, with the assessment on their tax bill to cover the maintenance of the detention basin. So that's one option. The other option would be the city could basically add staff and hire city employees. And they would probably be part of the Parks and Recreation Department, and do the landscape maintenance with in-house staff. So those are two alternatives if the city council wanted to pursue that. So.
Matt, a question on that. You know, if it were to go to HOA, and would it have to be a district for that retention, or could the HOA contract with the city for it?
I think they could contract for it, but yeah, we'd have to look into that further. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know that there'd be any savings if we ended up just doing it in their name as opposed to us doing it now with the parcel-based tax. So.
Okay. I'm just curious if we were limited, or if there were other.
No, and just as history for Councilmember Toussaint, we've had this on the staff report for probably the 9 years that this district's been in place. And the HOA piece came up a couple of times early on when some of the residents were fighting about the price. They thought it would come down lower if we did something like that. And to be honest, I think the option of hiring city employees, both of these options are probably going to end up being more expensive for them potentially.
The city does not have the unilateral power to create a homeowners association, nor would the city have the unilateral power to go back and amend conditions of approval. This is a vested map, so we don't have the legal power to unilaterally change the conditions of approval. The owner of the property could make application to change, and the homeowners could form a homeowners association. And then by negotiation, as the city reviewed that application, you could reach changes, but the homeowners have been aware of that possibility for a decade now, and to my knowledge have never expressed an interest in actually forming a homeowners association. The advantage to us would be they would be responsible for hiring the people to do the work and directing them, and then we wouldn't have to go through the headache of doing these notices every year.
That's all I was recognizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, I think as Brad mentioned, I think after they realized that a homeowners association would end up actually being more expensive, they kind of have dropped that. But we've left it in the staff report as an alternative still. So.
So my last question. Shows there's 169 parcels there. Is that the total build-out, or is this just what's there now?
Yeah,
Total build-out.
169 is the total build-out. Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Thank you, Matt. If there's no other discussion on the consent calendar, can I have a motion accepting the consent items A through D minus C, I guess it is?
Minus D.
D, oh, it's A through E minus D.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we accept A, B, C, and E.
I'll second it.
It's been moved in second. I'm going to have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Deuce,
Yes?
Councilmember Jameson,
Yes?
Councilmember Zimmerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. On to the regular agenda, item number 7.
Yep.
You betcha.
Did you want Shelby to say something on it? No.
Do you want to say something, Shelby?
We're good. No, just thank you very much.
Actually, while you're there, I want to comment on his report for his annual report on the San Ynez Valley, visiting San Ynez Valley. What he spelled out in that was something that was very impressive, and what he's accomplished with the funds that he's gotten has been fantastic. And I just want the folks to be aware that Shelby has done a dramatic thing to bring more visitors to the valley and to upgrade the hospitality industry because of it, and to create a real unified valley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just like to say that representing the entire valley is very special. And Solvang does have more hotels than anybody else, and so you do support us, and we do provide a lot of funding. And we don't forget that, and we appreciate that. And we couldn't do it without your support and without Tracy at the Solvang CVB. It's a great team we have going. Let's keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby.
And no picture?
A selfie.
It's a ussies. It's about
It's an ussie, yeah.
Get everybody. Oh, I got everybody. Okay, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Shelby. Okay, now item 7.
Water and wastewater rate increases.
Staff report.
I think we're actually going to have Michael, a group from Bartle Wells, I was about to name last consultant, come up and give his PowerPoint. I do have a staff report in there, but I think his presentation will cover a lot of those points in that.
Good.
Good evening, everyone. Last time we presented was in January, and council informed us to come back with an analysis on the water rates. So this is our second meeting. And my name is Michael DeGroot with Bartle Wells Associates. So our objective this evening is to give you a refresher on the January presentation for the water rates, go over the CCWA requirements, which is the Central Coast Water Authority, your water supply agreement requirements, and then go over our updated rate increase scenarios based on the council requested scenarios. Then we'll go over our proposed rate structures and regional rate surveys. So for our presentation today, we're going to review the council feedback from January, and then your rate requirements and recommended increases, and then our recommended rate structures. So from the January meeting, we had some feedback on different options to look at for the water enterprise. One is, what would a no rate increase scenario look like? A second option would be to fund $3.4 million of capital with a general fund gift. And then a third option would be to fund $3.4 million through a general fund loan at 1% interest, and that'd be a 20-year loan. For the rate structures, we received feedback on doing a uniform tier for all users. Currently, you charge your residential and non-residential customers based on different structures. So this would be a uniform tier for the volumetric rate. And then we're going to look at the rate calculation in more detail. And then finally, we were asked to do a new rate survey using the median usage, which is 800 cubic foot. So here, let's review your current rates. Currently, you serve about 2,174 metered connections, and approximately 80% of those are single-family residential meters, and we're expecting approximately 0.5% of growth per year. The last rate increase was January 21st, 2016. For this study, we're looking at $4.5 million of planned capital projects over the next 5 years, and then we are also paying special attention to the legal requirements of Proposition 218, which requires you to have a cost basis for your tiered water rates. And here's your current rate schedule. So single family is charged on a 2-tier structure. The first tier is 0 to 1,600 cubic foot, and 100 cubic foot is about 748 gallons. The first tier is charged $3.45, and the second tier $4.05. Your other users pay a rate on every 100 cubic foot used of $3.75. So it's between the tier 1 and tier 2 of single family. And then you also charge a fixed monthly meter charge for a 5/8 inch meter, which is your typical residential meter. It's $75.43. And you receive about 2/3 of your revenue from the fixed charges. So current issues here, based on our projections, your rate revenue is not going to be sufficient to fund your operation, maintenance, and capital project costs. So we're recommending to either obtain a loan or use general fund revenue to fund your capital projects and smooth your rate increases. Additionally, the rate revenue will not be sufficient to fund the CCWA requirement. And finally, we want to evaluate your single-family residential tier structure as the customer class as a whole has conserved. As I mentioned, their current structure is about 67% fixed and 33% volumetric, and that has served you very well during the drought. It's much higher fixed revenue than a typical agency's. Santa Barbara would be an example of an agency which collects a lot less from fixed and subsequently is doing a lot higher rate increases. We're recommending that the city eliminate the 150% times out-of-city rate because the amount of out-of-city customers and the additional revenue is small, and the costs are difficult to quantify, and for legal purposes, the rate has to be cost justified. So we're recommending just eliminating that. So here's a look at the single-family residential consumption. And you can see that the blue line is your current Tier 1 breakpoint at 1,600 cubic foot. And we're recommending lowering that down to the 1,200 cubic foot to capture more of that consumption, higher consumption. So these are your costs, your operating costs on the system. You've got personnel expenses, maintenance and repairs, large expense for your state's water supply agreement, which is $2 to $3 million a year. You've got conservation program costs and contracts and services. And on average, it costs about $5.4 million a year, expected over the next 5 years. And here's your capital improvement program. Total 5-year cost is about $5.2 million. You've got a lot of well projects and meter replacements, et cetera. So we wanted to take a look at the Central Coast Water Authority rate covenant, because this is really what's driving your rate increases and our recommendations. So I just want to read this requirement to you, which is from the official statement. Each Santa Barbara purveyor participant has agreed to fix, prescribe, and collect rates and charges in connection with its water system, which will be sufficient to yield each fiscal year net water system revenues equal to 125% of the sum of the contract payments required. And that's your water supply agreement contract. Using the general fund's revenues to meet this requirement, we're saying is not financially sustainable. Your water enterprise is a self-supporting enterprise, and we don't recommend relying on general funds every year to fund and maintain this requirement. So as a result, you're going to need rate increases to meet that 125% requirement. We've got the projected coverage without any rate increases at the bottom, and you can see by fiscal year 21-22, that's only going to be about 0.77, and it needs to be about 1.25. So looking at your financial targets, we're recommending that loan of $3.4 million. You could also use general funds to fund that. You've got debt service coverage requirement on any additional loan that you take of 1.25 times, and general funds can be used in place of the loan. And then you've got a recommended fund reserve target of about 25% of your annual operating cost, which is about $1.3 million per year. And then finally, you've got that CCWA supply agreement where your net revenues need to be at least 1.25 times that water supply agreement cost.
Are those all additive?
In terms of being additive, no, there's a separate analysis done for the debt service coverage and a separate analysis done for the CCWA water supply agreement.
So in effect, all we need to do is hit 1.25%. We cover all three of those requirements?
Right, exactly. And you'll see a little bit later when we look at the options that were requested that the rate increases that we recommend are the same in each scenario.
Okay, thank you.
So here's an overview of your expenses again. Source of supply is in the purple. So a lot of your expenses are related to water purchases. And this is graphically shows you what would happen if you didn't have any rate increases, and we also excluded the capital projects. You could see the blue as your total annual operating expenses, and the yellow line is your operating revenue. So by fiscal year 21-22, we're projecting you would have about a $700,000 per year deficit. And you can see in the green line your fund balance would be decreasing over the period. So this is graphically why you need to increase your rates. So here's proposed rate increase. This is just for comparison purposes, the increase from last time. We were looking at two 8.5% increases, followed by a 6.5%, a 3%, and then a 1.7%. And your revenue from rates would go from about $4.7 million to about $6.3 million. We're proposing to smooth those out using your rate coverage deposit, which you hold with the CCWA. And that's about $600,000 that can be used to meet this coverage requirement. And that allowed us to smooth the rate increases to 5.5% for the first 4 years, and then a final 5%. So your revenue would go from about $4.7 million to about $6.3 million.
Can you explain how the rate coverage deposit works exactly?
Right. So you, when you signed up with the CCWA to do the bond issue, each agency contributed some funds that the CCWA, in this case, it's on hold with ID1, your particular deposit, but it's used to help agencies meet the CCWA rate coverage requirement of that 1.25 times. So it's kind of, we like to think of it as kind of a little pot of money that's used for emergencies, and also to make it a little bit easier to meet that requirement. So you can use that 600,000 to meet the CCWA requirement.
I think the key thing you said there was it's ID1 that's holding it. So I think this is all kind of just a waste of time, because with us giving up our responsibility or power to ID1, they're the ones responsible for it. That's basically the agreement. So the redundancy is unnecessary.
Actually, the 600,000 is held by CCWA. It is the cities, but you remember, we're not a member of CCWA, so it's in ID1's rate reserve, but really when they count it, they look at it for the city of Solvang. So we deposited that back when we started State Water. But I think what you're getting at is if we consolidate with ID1, is that what?
No, they have it?
No, it's held with CCWA. Our rate coverage deposit of 600,000 is held with CCWA, and it's used in our calculations.
The meetings I've gone to, ID1 talks about how they have that reserve or that buffer that's required of them.
That's a separate accounting function that ID1 is doing for itself to protect itself. It's a result of the fact that we're not members of CCWA. We didn't sign on to that agreement, but we do have a water supply agreement with ID1. So ID1 sets its own reserve to protect themselves from our potential default, but we are still contractually obligated to meet the rate covenant. So we might argue that they don't need to have that bigger reserve because we don't think we're going to default, and they would argue that.
But the bottom line is they're responsible for it. So whatever happens, they're responsible for it.
No.
And then our agreement comes trickling down from there. We don't fall under the stipulation of CCWA because we're not a member of CCWA.
Well, our water supply agreement with ID1 took all the covenants that were in their agreement and said we will match those.
So we are contractually obligated to comply with the language in the rate covenant. It's just contained in our agreement with CCWA. I mean, with ID1. I'm confusing my acronyms. In fact, many years ago, when we went through an extended period of time without any water rate increases, we did have ID1 expressing an interest that we comply with the language in the water supply agreement so that they would not be forced to sue us to make us comply. And so we have done our best to comply since then. So the $600,000 really is Solvang money. CCWA accounts for it much in the same fashion as if we were part of CCWA, because they have a duty of disclosure to the bondholders to make sure that everybody is complying with the rate covenant, even us. So it works much the same way.
And just to add, I think ID1 also then keeps $3 million in their reserves, which they say is in case Solvang defaults. So that may be the $3 million you're talking about. That is not our money. That's the money they keep in case we default. But we've always made our payments, and we've never had that issue. So
When we pay off the mortgage for the CCWA portion, do we get our deposit back?
no, you'll always have to well, you can take your deposit back at any time, but you always have to meet that 1 1/4 rate coverage. It's a good buffer to have it there. That helps if your rates all of a sudden, let's say you had a lot of conservation and your
But like
rates weren't enough
if we
revenue.
paid off the CCWA portion of the state water mortgage,
I guess at some point, yeah, theoretically you would be done with those, but
Theoretically,
But you still would have to be able to make your variable payments, and there's other payments in there, in the CCWA payments that you make. Some of that's debt, and some of that's pretty much long-term. It's going to be your payment, and you'll always have to be able to make 125% of what your payments are going to be for that year. What their estimated
so when our
payments are.
mortgage payment for that portion is $840,000 a year, to my understanding, for the CCWA portion.
Yeah, but the
And then we
CCW
get-
also is a DWR. It's all one
Right.
payment
But
that we
that
make.
portion of it means
The
that
CCWA portion debt is about 800 some thousand a year.
Okay.
But
So we-
our obligation includes the ability to pay all of it. Because the CCW, there's,
So I guess.
I guess where I'm going with it, if our-
Let me, so in essence, our rate covenant coverage, the amount that we have to raise, have in revenue, will be reduced by 800,000 once we pay off that.
There we go.
Piece.
That's
That's, I
what
think,
I'm
what
looking
you're
for.
asking.
Yeah. And then we get our portion of the deposit back that would be calculated within, because of the.
You can, you can. We have, each entity in CCWA has different amounts in. Some have no money in their rate coverage deposit. They just put their rates enough to meet it every year.
Like the 600,000 deposit that's there now, is that to cover the whole 3 million per year that we're averaging, or is that just the
No,
840,000?
to not, yeah, you'd have to have 3 million in your rate coverage deposit if you want to be able to fully be ready to not make your payment. So, yeah, the 600 was just something that the city deposited initially. I don't remember what the math was for that. But like I said, we could ask for that back, but it's a buffer for you to have that there when they do their coverage every year, their coverage calc. If, say, you're like at 1.15, you can use that 600,000 or a portion of it towards that to say, but we have this on deposit, and that helps you get to your 1.25.
right, and so you don't necessarily spend it. So what happens theoretically?
You just shift it, and then,
Well, you don't, it's just there to count towards your rate coverage.
Right.
Because as well as we try and do on setting rates, sometimes droughts happen and income goes down, revenue goes down. And so your actual revenues can then end up not meeting the 1.25%. But if the coverage is there, so the bondholders know they're going to get paid, then CCWA's happy, ID1's happy, and we don't have problems. Even though we don't actually spend out of the 600, it's just there for an accounting purpose to show that we're going to be able to make the payments.
okay. So our total rate coverage deposit is how much for everything?
We only have 600 on deposit. What we have is our reserves and our revenue that we get each year. That's how we're meeting our revenue rate coverage.
Okay.
With the revenue we generate,
So there's only 600,000 over
Yeah.
at CCWA?
yes.
Okay.
How's that 600,000 booked? Is that shown in the books as an asset? Okay, restricted? Restricted?
Yeah, it's in our notes in your CAFR in regards to your state water payment that you do, or that we're due every year, and it's shown as a portion of that.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Thanks.
No, it's shown as an asset.
But it makes interest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's making interest there, but it's shown as, as an asset for us.
Go ahead with your
Okay.
presentation. Thank you.
So we looked at the rate scenarios requested by the council. And so you've got kind of two tests here. The first test is that CCWA test where you need to collect a certain amount of revenue each year. And the second test is our $1.3 million O&M recommended fund balance. So we looked at 4 scenarios. The first one is the bank loan. And under all of our 4 scenarios, we're recommending the same increases, but the difference is how much you're going to have in reserves. So under the bank loan scenario, you would have about 1.6 million at the end of FY 2022. Under the no rate increase, no capital project scenario, you would not meet the 25% O&M. You would only have about $1 million left in FY 2022. The general fund gift gives you the highest ending fund balance of 2.7 million in FY 2022, and then finally the 1% interest scenario will give you about 1.9 million. But in all of these except for the no rate increase scenario, you're going to be meeting that 25% O&M. So really what's driving our recommendation is the amount of revenue you need to collect each year to meet that CCWA requirement. So this shows you the CCWA requirement for all three of those scenarios, the bank loan, general fund gift, or general fund loan for capital, essentially, you met your coverage in FY 16-17, and we're projecting using that rate coverage deposit in FY 2020 and 21 to meet the 1.25. And then by FY 2022, your rates should be sufficient to meet the 1.25.
That 400 and 200 that goes in, is that a requirement in that specific year, or can it be dribbled in?
That is how much of the rate coverage fund deposit that you're relying on to meet that 1.25. So it's just staying on the books as 600,000, but you're relying on 400,000 in FY 2020 and 200,000 in FY 2021.
Would we be violating our contractual requirement if we didn't put the 400 in, but have it available to be put in?
That's actually all it's doing. You're not actually spending 400,000 of the 600,000 in that year and then 200,000. What you're doing is, in that particular year under this scenario, for compliance purposes, we can show that we're meeting the 1.25 because of the amount that's on deposit. But if you otherwise just make your payments on time and you pay your operating budget, that money actually just stays in that account. It doesn't disappear. It's just used to show that between the rates the rates you're charging and the amount on deposit, the 1.25 rate covenant has been complied with.
It's just shifting.
Excuse me a second. What you're saying is then we're required to, for example, borrow that 400,000.
No,
We can.
it's there.
It's already there.
It's there. It doesn't actually, it's not, I hate when I'm talking finance because you know me and math, but it's not actually spent.
Yes.
We have to prove every year that we're meeting the rate covenant.
We have that in
And
the.
so in years where we meet the rate covenant regardless, nobody even looks at the 600,000. That's probably why some entities don't have any on deposit, because they feel they're always going to meet the rate covenant. It's never going to be a problem. We don't have to have any fund over there. So it's, you're using it in the sense of you're relying upon the fact that it's in the bank to show that you're meeting the rate covenant, but you're not spending it. So then when you roll over into 2021/22 and you're meeting the rate covenant by your rates, the 600,000 is still there in the bank.
Is this 600 that's in CCWA?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So just,
Content
I'll
is
try to
public.
explain the concept, okay?
Yeah.
The concept is you didn't meet the coverage calc, but, so they have essentially money allocated. So in that next 12-month period, if you were not to be able to make your full state water payment, you have that 400 to cover. That's the concept. It's there to cover. But if your rates are good through that next year, it still just stays there.
Okay. Thank you.
And just as another clarification, so when you loan money on this same table, basically up higher, when it flows down, the loan comes in as revenue and calculates into the rate coverage?
Right, where the CCWA calculates that as kind of a capital contribution.
So you treat it like revenue?
Not in that sense. So you can't comply with the rate covenant and loan money for operating expenses. You can loan money for capital expenses and still comply with the rate covenant. But basically, if you use general fund to pay operating and maintenance expenses, then you're not in compliance with the rate covenant. So we can't work it that way.
In the Excel spreadsheet, if I look at the loans portion, if I just zero the loan out for the CIP, 1.4 million in 2017-18, you go from a 1.42 coverage to a 0.95 coverage. So what I'm trying to understand is maybe we could consider a better way of loaning to meet our coverage in the shorter years.
The the loaning for capital projects doesn't help you meet your rate coverage.
In the Excel spreadsheets, it does.
Well, but in the reality, it doesn't. What happens is either loaning or gifting general fund for capital expenditures is legal, and it will it'll lessen the amount of increases you have to pass. I was trying to avoid lowering rates because in the real world, it won't end up lowering rates. It lessens the amount of rates you have to charge because you don't have to charge for the interest on that, and you don't have to charge for the capital expense to the ratepayers. But once you've expended money for a capital project, it also increases your operations and maintenance part. So the rates are going to have to match the increased operations and maintenance from the increased capital expenditures. I hope that makes.
I'm just going off the math from the Excel spreadsheets, and if I change the loan value, it changes the rate coverage. And so then I guess what you're telling me is that the way that this whole rate study is illegal.
No, I'm just, no, this rate study not only meets my legal test, it meets the experts' legal tests. I'm just saying, and I don't know how Excel works. So that's another language. I mean, I can plug stuff in, but I'm not going to pretend I'm an Excel expert.
I just like to make sure that all the T's cross and the I, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I'm just looking at it here, and
The
let
spreadsheet
these
might
two-
not be put together correctly.
then this whole presentation
Oh,
isn't.
this different.
No.
I mean, the numbers are the same, but the calculation
The
involved.
spreadsheet
in the
drives
spreadsheet.
this. If you change something on the spreadsheet, it recalculates everything. So you can actually forecast everything. If you want to come in and say, you know what, we're going to reduce meter charges by 10%, you can automatically come out with the new volumetric charge that you're going to have. If you change your target revenue, it'll reforecast everything, including your balance ending in 2021. And that's by you just sitting there with a little pencil, just saying instead of a $4.7 million target revenue, we want to change to $5 million target revenue. It'll then beef up the volumetric or meter rates accordingly and show you your appropriate checking account balance ending in 2022. And then it'll even change the graphs and rerun those.
So I think in terms of the question on the loan with the coverage requirement, the loan proceeds would be, I believe, considered capital contributions and part of total revenue for the CCWA calculation.
But just to clarify, once you do that and you give money for the loan, you do the loan for the capital contributions, it frees up your other revenues to cover those operating maintenance expenses.
Right. So you would, we believe that we've done this correctly and you would meet your coverage requirement.
So what I'm just saying there is that if you did something like a scenario where let's see, we're talking year 2017-18, you could do a loan instead of 1.4 million, instead of loaning the full CIP. If you actually just put in 850,000 there, you still meet your rate coverage. And the next year following, if you did like $1 million loan there, you still meet your rate coverage. And then you can drop in and do a couple smaller loans for 2019 and 2020, 2021.
I think it depends on the capital, the plan. Right.
Right. I mean, there's many ways to, kind of calculate the rates, and you can change which years you want to take the loan. But basically, the methodology here is that we want to smoothen your rates, and we want to be able to meet your CCWA requirement with your rate revenue by FY 2022, and I believe we've done that. And so I think you've got some very smooth, rate increases here, 5.5% for 4 years, and then 5%, and you're meeting your CCWA requirements, and that's the way that we think you should implement these rates.
My only comment is just there's maybe a more efficient way that we could reorganize this. It also reduces down when it comes into the revenue requirement, where you got the loan debt service coming in that starts in 2017, 2018. There's a half year, because of the time that you're taking the loan, there's a half year on a smaller amount for the how you currently suggest it, 1.4 million. You're paying interest and principal on that for 6 months because of the way our fiscal year works. And then the next year following, it's going to be 6 months on the prior loan plus the amortization schedule, and then another 6 months on the new loan that's being pulled out. So even just in loans, we could readjust the way that we do our loans and meet our rate covenants, and you actually could adjust that to not even use any of our deposit.
Right. There's many ways to calculate it, but in terms of using the deposit, that deposit is on hold, so you're not actually using that up.
Mm-hmm. I'm just making a statement. You could theoretically do it without even having to use that, and then if we wanted to go even lower for another penny in rate savings, we could then use the deposit. Because that's exactly what's going on here. The deposit is just to achieve the 5.5 in 2020, 2021.
But I think, at the end of the day, what you're looking for is to meet that CCWA requirement with your rates in 21, 22, and you're looking for smooth rates. And I think, the methodology you're talking about would not change the magnitude of the increases. But it may, change the way that it's presented here.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out options. I'm not.
Is there
Go on
more,
to the
is there
next
more to
slide.
more to the presentation?
So continuing on here, this is the coverage with no rate increases and no capital. And as you can see in 21, 22, you'd be at 0.77 coverage. So now looking at the proposed rate structure scenarios, I just want to kind of go into some detail here on our cost allocation strategy. Essentially, we've divided your costs into fixed versus variable, and we've identified your variable cost to be the source of supply and your state water payment portion, which is variable. And then we've identified two costs which we consider related to excess use, which is the ID1 meter fees and the conservation program costs. So we're recovering the fixed costs on your meter charges. Everyone pays the variable costs of the source of supply and state water payment. And then residential tier 2 and commercial users pay for the excess user costs of the ID1 fees and the conservation program. So you can see here, these are the costs recovered by each class of customer, and residential tier 1 does not pay for the ID1 meter fees or the conservation program. So last time we had 3 scenarios for rates, and we've added in a 4th for the uniform tier, but I'd just like to go through these scenarios quickly. Scenario 1, we're recommending just keeping the current tier in this scenario, 0 to 16, and then lowering your fixed charges from 67% of your total revenue to about 54%. So the meter charge would be $61.58. Scenario 2 would be actually to lower the tier, which is our recommendation, from 0 to 16 to 0 to 12. And then this has the lower fixed costs of 54% of your total revenue compared to 67%. And in this scenario, more bills would pay the Tier 2 rate. We have a third scenario, and this is kind of the middle ground between your current rates and the 54% fixed. This is 60% fixed with a 0 to 1,200 cubic foot tier. And this is our recommendation in terms of the option you should choose. It gives you a solid amount of fixed revenue. The tier more accurately reflects the consumption, and your lower user is going to get a little bit of a break because you're not collecting so much on the fixed meter charge. And then finally, scenario 4, all water users would pay the other use rate, which is $5.10. And then we just show the meter charges as the 54% fixed scenario. So those are our 4 scenarios. Now we have a 2 rate surveys. This one's for 1,000 cubic foot, which we've seen before. And your current bill for a user using 1,000 cubic foot a month is about $109.93. And under your current rate structure, that would go to $115.98. And the 60% and 54% scenarios are approximately where your current rate structure would be. Looking at the 800 cubic foot survey, which is your average median use, you're at about $103.03 a month. And this is where you really see the difference between the recommended rate structures. So for the 54% fixed, your rate would go up about $2.85 per month in the first year. For the 60% fixed, you're going about $4.41 to $107.37. And then keeping your current structure, you'd be going up about $5.67 in the first year to $108.70. So we're recommending that you implement the 1,200 cubic foot tier structure to reflect your current consumption data. As far as the options for the 54% fixed, scenario 2 is preferred for the least impact on the minimum users, but we're recommending going with scenario 3 for a little bit higher fixed revenue, 60% fixed, and that'll help you in case of a drought type scenario. So this is kind of the middle ground between your current structure and the 54% fixed scenario. And I just want to remind the council that the rates placed on the Prop 218 notice are going to be the maximum possible rates for the next 5 years. If revenues come in higher than expected and expenses come in lower, you can choose to adopt lower rates, and you can make that decision at that time.
That would also be a time to look at the different timing of capital expenditures, et cetera. You could do that on an annual basis and understand it in real time. At this point in time, we're trying to project over 5 years. You can't really predict the capital expenditures down to a particular month. You just don't know. And so what they've done is they tried to smooth that out. But as you review, the current program is, even though you adopt rates, you review them every year before actually implementing the next year's increase. And that would be a time to actually look at those factors that he already mentioned, and how can we affect it in timing so that we're still making everything. It could turn out that you don't need to, at a particular time, go to the maximum extent possible. Capital projects may be delayed. Things may change. They've changed so often in the past that we know that happens.
All right. I'm also looking at item 8, where it's looking that we're potentially investing money for a measly yield of the highest on a 3-year term of 1.8 we'd be better off loaning it to the enterprise fund at 2% versus the 5% that's here.
Yeah, the 1% is based on what we lose in our LAIF fund, so that's where that came from. I think one was, what, 0.7.
Let's discuss that when we bring that back for discussion. Right now, if there's questions of the staff report right now.
Michael, how many of these, Michael, right? How many of these have you done? Right, how many presentations have you given?
It's tough to say, maybe 10.
Okay, cool, all right, hang in there.
Thank you.
It's probably a safe bet he never says we should lower rates.
Seeing no correct, any other staff questions of the staff report?
No.
Okay, then with that, we'll take it to the public for comment. I have a speaker slip from Fred Koval, followed by Fred Koval. Oh, that's the next one.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Some observations. First of all, what we got here tonight in this presentation, which is reflected by the study that was updated, and Chart B had a change from your presentation 2 weeks ago. It's got a different number. 187, 100 cubic feet for other versus 183. That hasn't been brought out. And that affects all of the presentation here tonight. Okay? Also, the average and the medium, the average they call the mean, and the medium, that's half above and half below, those numbers got changed in Chart B radically. What I don't understand is how can the presentation tonight not reflect that? In other words, why are we fooling around with 8 or 10 when it should really be presentation on the costs based on the medium? Excuse me, the mean, which is the average. Based on those two charts, they're about at the very end of tonight's presentation. So, to me, it needs some serious work. Now, what is my major observation tonight? The presentation tonight was static. You couldn't do any what-ifs. The Excel spreadsheet is there, and it's been demonstrated tonight by one of the city council members, that you can do any kind of what-if you want, and you get an instant answer. Because everything comes off that Excel spreadsheet.
We'll probably do that when we bring it back in the public comment. That'll be part of our discussion, is how we're going to arrive at our decisions. And those questions will be probably answered that you're speaking of right now.
Well, I'm not so sure, because I haven't seen anything but a static presentation here by Bardwell's Associates. Okay, it's very disingenuous to do a 5-year projection when your CIPs are 10 years. And what if you make some mistakes up front now, and now you have to really do a number on the ratepayers in the last 5 years? This needs to be a 10-year projection and nothing less. And you can do it. This has nothing to do with Prop 218. You can do it. The first thing I would do is put in $1 million bogey in the 10 years. You need it. Because you don't have any idea. You guys haven't even covered the big issues. The biological opinion becoming biological critical. What are the costs? It's going to be a full employment act for lawyers in the last 2 years when the ground support requirement comes in, the GSA. There was a presentation here about a week ago or so or two by Bruce Wales. No staff attended. No feel for that whatsoever. Now let's talk about the two classes. Two classes. You got two classes out there right now. You got the 2-tier and you got the no tier or the 1-tier. That's two classes. And then you got a third class that's been created. And that is that how do you treat the others? When some of the others are a mix of commercial and residential. Single-family residents are mixed in with commercial. And they only have 1 meter. So instead of being treated like single-family residents, they're being treated like other, and they get a 1 rate. So the biggest problem you got today is nobody's treated equal. You've got so many classes. Let me give you some examples. I'll be finished in a minute, Mayor. I want to give you some examples because you ought to give me, this is an important thing. This affects everybody's pocketbook in this city. The Fjord Drive Mobile Home Park. Oh, they don't have any meters, but they're going to put them in now. So now they get the other rate, 1 rate. When they put in the meters, are you going to go to a 2-tier? By gosh, that might be something to think about. What about, I'll give you the best one in the world, on Copenhagen Drive, right next to Ace Hardware. What do you have? You got the Olive House. What do you have behind it? You got 2 apartments upstairs, and one that's being used for storage downstairs. And then on Fur Avenue, you have La Marina Market. So you got a mix of single-family residents in terms of apartments, and you have 2 commercials, a mix. 1 3/4-inch meter drives them all. By gosh, those apartment guys upstairs are getting a hell of a deal. What happened in 2011? That's when it happened. And you got this grandiose idea that nobody can pay more. Commercial can't subsidize the single-family residence. Today, it's just the reverse. And you ought to be in jail for it. Okay?
Thank you,
All right.
Fred. Thank you, Fred.
Yorba Linda.
We should
Hey,
tr-
Yorba
we-
Linda,
Fred,
look at this.
Fred,
That's the one you should be looking at.
You've
Why can't I have
you've
an extra
exceeded-
minute or two, Mayor?
Because
Why are you shutting me off?
because you've exceeded the 5-minute limit that we set, and we've given you plenty of extra time. So if you wouldn't mind sitting down, we would appreciate it.
Fine.
Thank you.
Divide 2174 by 2 and add 1. And that's what's going to happen to you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I have no other speaker slips. It's the interest, Fred, I think. We've advertised that we're having a water rate hearing. You see the mob we have out here? So people are probably either not concerned or they're satisfied with their service. That's the only thing we can think.
Why don't you walk the streets and find out? Why don't you ask everybody yourself and see where they stand with you?
I can't ask 100% of the people.
Well, sure you can. Walk the streets.
Shut him down.
You get, okay. If there's no other public speakers, we'll bring it back to the council for a discussion and decision. And who would like to start?
Before the ball starts rolling here.
Millennium Star.
I have to say, just to comment on the,
Oh, excuse me, just a second. We're going to have to take a 5-minute break for a rest stop.
What's going on?
We are.
Oh, restroom?
Okay, we're ready to convene. We're bringing this back to the dais or to the council for discussion and decision regarding agenda item 7. Who would like to start?
I actually have a couple questions. I noticed that in the, I think if you go back on your PowerPoint a little bit to the solving all other monthly water consumption.
For this
I think it's
presentation.
page 4 in your
Is that in the PowerPoint or in the?
PowerPoint, I
rate?
believe. It's, what I'm looking for is these.
That's not in his PowerPoint.
Oh, it's in the report. Oh, okay. I thought it was there for some reason. Okay. I noticed that on that, this graph that we have here, when I,
Page 147.
I think it's 4 in the water tables, if you're looking at the numbers on the water
130,
tables.
it's 133, am I,
Right there. You got-
there you go. Yep.
Do you have another copy of that water rate study?
Oh, one.
Do I? I mean, you do. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I got it. I've got it, yeah. Okay. Page which?
Yeah, 134. Oh, you're in P. Towards the end. This is going to be towards the beginning. There we go. So, in this chart here, I just noticed that from the last water rate study meeting, this new updated chart is missing 10 acre feet. So when you look at your prior chart in the last meeting, which is this guy, it reads total use 187, 496, 100 cubic feet, which is approximately 10 acre feet. This new one is 4,400 shy.
Right, that's a good catch. We actually had an error on that text blurb from the last presentation, which was corrected in this one. But the error was limited just to the text blurb.
So the I understand that it was from the text blurb because I'm the one that caught that error and Brad sent it to you. But so that dramatically changed the numbers that you currently have, which on the prior one it said mean monthly use 26. The new one is 37.9, and the mean monthly use of 6 HCF is now at 11. And that was not driven by any backup data, and so that was just caught that those numbers were off. But it doesn't change what I'm still confused about is the 187 or 183 that's now reflecting today, because when I also look in the updated Excel spreadsheet on the current on this rate study right here, it still reads the old amount of HCF total use, or it reads the new amount HCF total usage. So the new chart today is missing about 10 acre feet, and your all other in your Excel, which is driving all your numbers up here, is also missing that 4,400.
Right. The error was limited to the text blurb, and it was 4,100 cubic foot.
Okay, but if I look at your rate study from last time, and even project out the exact revenue based on the total volumetric, the numbers are different. So something's changed. And I'm just wondering where this Excel spreadsheet is coming from and what is the accuracy on it. It also leads into my second question, which is when you add up the total HCF usage for SFR inside, all other inside, and then outside, in your new spreadsheet, it all adds up to 971.47 acre feet. But I have a water usage document from 1986 to 2016, and it shows that in 2015 we used 1,078 acre feet and 1,073 acre feet. So there's 100+ acre feet of water that's not accounted for in here, so I want to know what the shrinkage is.
Is that data from fiscal year or calendar year?
That I'm not sure. Brad, do you? So this, I assume this is calendar because of the way it's worded up here. And I understand that we're based on fiscal year and that would change numbers, but what my concern still is that in 2014 we're at 1342, then 1078 and 1073. So how is this thing being swung? Because it also means that if there's 100 acre feet missing in terms of our
Yeah, I think Matt's going to explain to you the
Our
difference
revenue.
between sold water and produced water.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what numbers you're looking at, but our production numbers are always much higher than the sales because we have water loss, unaccounted for water. So our water system is actually pretty good. It's usually if you're under 10% of unaccounted for water, that's considered pretty good, according to American Water Works Association. But basically, there are inaccuracies in the actual meter reading of the individual meters. We have water leaks in our system. We occasionally have to flush our wells and hydrants, and frequently that's not metered. There's some water theft. So all those things added together are what they refer to as unaccounted for water. So our production numbers, so again, I'm not sure what data you're looking at, but if you look at just the raw production numbers from our wells, they're producing quite a bit higher volume of water than what's actually read in the total sum of all the individual meters.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does,
I'm
and
not sure if that
I'm just
answers-
doing all my balance and checks, and when I see 100+ acre feet of water missing that we're not billing out for, then it makes me wonder where,
Yeah, no, that's,
who's
that's
embezzling
really, that's
it, or
really good.
where's it?
Yeah, that's
And
excellent.
so you mentioned water theft, there's things like that. Is there a way that, so that if you multiply the most conservative base volumetric charge of $3.45, if you convert that into a yearly loss, that'd be $165,000 loss per year that's not coming in as revenue. We've done everything. We've treated the water. Whole 9 yards. We've paid for it,
Yeah.
and then we're now losing almost $200,000 a year
Yeah.
there. So is there a way
Well,
that we can become more efficient there? Is this a shrinkage issue we could address and start trimming down on?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I've been here a little over 6 years. With the last water rate study, we were criticized, in fact, by members of the public for having a water line replacement program, proposing to spend $200,000 to $200,000 to $300,000 every year replacing water lines and broken valves that do leak also. And we do have in our 10-year capital plan also our meter replacement program. So the two main things we can do to reduce that unaccounted for water is implement a meter replacement program and a water line replacement program. So this fiscal year, well, actually last fiscal year, at the end of last fiscal year, we implemented the first step of our meter replacement program. But at the staff level, we're feeling the pinch on one side to reduce capital costs, because that's the one area we have the most sort of control over, that we can expand greatly or reduce greatly. All those operating costs for power and chemicals and things like that, and maintenance, those we have less control over. But anyway, so to answer your question, the two big things we can do is meter replacement program and water line replacement program. We've been deferring our water line replacement program, and instead of being proactive in our maintenance, we've been reactive and just putting repair clamps on leaks. And we have several leaks every year.
So I guess the next question is, if we have that shrinkage issue of almost 200,000 a year that we could recapture, that would almost pay the loan on a $3 million loan based at 2%. So would we be more efficient to possibly consider moving up a CIP that might reduce our shrinkage prior to doing something else? Like, I'm just talking about a possible reorganization
Yeah,
to go after lost revenue first before.
Yeah, several years ago, we had it that way. You know, we were proposing the water line replacement program and the meter replacement program. Like I mentioned, we did implement the first phase of our meter replacement program, but and if you look at the 10-year capital plan,
I see, yeah.
instead of just aggressively, doing it and getting them all replaced, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And so do you, in your opinion, is it that most of the shrinkage is caused by old meters that need to be replaced, or is there something else? I mean, we could have a pinch in a line anywhere in our infrastructure that's bleeding out. So
It's a combination of all.
So our unaccounted for water is around 9 to 10%, something like that. And we haven't really analyzed of that 9 or 10%, what portion of that is the meters versus what portion is leaks and other unaccounted for reasons. But most of our meters are very old and are not reading accurately. Generally speaking, when a meter ages, it reads less and less, and so we're giving more and more free water to the customers every year through that meter. So my guess is it's probably mostly the meters. That's why we try to keep that going a little bit and kind of basically put way off.
So the current
water
meter
line.
replacement program, when was that done? The ones that have been replaced.
Oh, we started last fiscal year and we finished over the summer.
And how many meters, like what percentage of the city was that?
Oh, well, we did all of the Alisal Ranch, so everything
Okay.
south of the
Quick
river.
question.
So,
On the meters, really quick, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Those new ones, do they have to be manually monitored, or is that something?
No, that's our new radio read system.
Okay.
And in fact, we thought we were going to have to drive around, just drive through the Alisal Ranch quickly, but they found that all they had to do was drive across the river, go about a block or two, and then turn around and it reads all of them, boom. So it's like really fantastic.
so also by upping that maybe on our CIP plan as a priority, we could potentially address shrinkage and look at the numbers, and maybe even since those were implemented last year, we could maybe see I don't know how,
Yeah, I think we could easily evaluate, because it's the Rancho Alisal, that's a meter reading book. We could
Right.
compare book to book to see how more accurate it read.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually a
I
higher use
just wanna make sure
area,
we're being
so, yeah.
efficient and
Yeah, I
we're-
think it'd be good,
That's
it'd be a
about
good
5%.
indicator.
I think
Yeah.
maybe it's about 7%. I forget what was exactly the number of meters. So it was somewhere between 100 and 200 meters that we replaced. And
Okay.
we have a total of like 2,100
right.
connections.
So you could kind of do the math on that and figure out
Yeah.
if we start seeing our shrinkage reducing, then maybe we need to chase more after meters. And then we also gain the efficiency of not having people go drive to every meter, tripping, falling,
Right, right, yeah.
whatever
There's-
else that
there's
goes along
multiple benefits.
with
Yeah,
that.
Exactly,
Okay.
you got it exactly right. So however the city council would like to direct us, we're happy to do that. And that's definitely a good idea.
Matt, do you happen to know just offhand, because I forgot, what the cost for meters for redoing, for a
Well, yeah, the
replacement?
project that we just did, I want to say it was like around 100,000.
Okay.
But that
was to
first
set up the
phase-
read.
Yeah, the first phase, we purchased this updated software and the vehicle radio unit, so we don't have to do that. with
Was
the
that
next
part
phase.
of the 100,000?
Correct, yeah, that was actually a large part of it.
Okay.
So now we have the infrastructure, we just need to
Right.
expand out.
Just replace the meters.
Okay, and the cost of just replacing those meters is,
Well, I think the software and the radio unit those two combined were about 25,000 of the 100,000.
But what is it per meter, roughly a new meter?
well, if 25,000 of the
The 100.
100, so then you got, if you just multiply that out by the total amount of meters,
Yeah, so it's a few $100s per meter, but it depends on the size of the meter. The larger meters are more expensive, but
right, and then it reduces staff time.
correct.
Yeah.
Let's drop back to what we need to work on. This is all great and
Hey,
interesting stuff.
I saw 100
And
missing
it's-
acre feet, so I want to know where it's going.
It's good questioning. We want to get back and discover, and give the staff direction as to how we want to make this decision on what water rates we're going to impose. So is there any questions, directions along the size, discussion of the various scenarios as to what we might want to do?
I think that the rate study's hacked. To be honest with you, I don't think there's any foundation there to make a decision off of. I don't know if we could take action tonight. There's no way this can validate a rate increase, that's for sure.
So I think there's some legitimacy to that, but perhaps kind of dialing in on how we want to see the next study come back. One of the things I really like is the one tier for all. So, everyone gets the same meter charge and the same volumetric rate.
Okay. Yeah, so the next step, so what we will do, once you give us direction on the tiers and the ratio of that, you'll get a final report that'll be based on that decision, so.
I want to discuss the loan, the $3.4 million loan. In looking at numbers, I believe that we cannot do agenda item 8 and loan money to the water fund. If we take $1 million out of that pot and invest it, we're going to return on the first numbers $14,000 in a year on that $1 million. But yet if we pay ourselves, as opposed to borrowing the money from a commercial enterprise, we can make about $84,000 per year on that money. The difference between what we pay the bank rates and what we charge the water department would be a difference of about $84,000 a year. So I would like to see us discuss the actual loaning of the funds to the water department at some rate that we could set a line of credit sort of arrangement that we pay out as we need the money, and that way the loan becomes, we start paying ourselves over a staggered rate, if you understand what I'm trying to say, and not consider investing $1 million out in the outside world, but investing it in our water department. Discussion, comments?
I think that's a great, because it's providing a benefit to all the ratepayers. We could loan the money at market rate. For example, on 8, that table alone reads that your highest yield on locking your money in for 3 years is 1.8%. We're better off matching that from our own general fund
I think we need to change loan to gift, because then if we have loan, then we're upping our expense.
If we can gift it, I think the way to go would be to pay off the CCWA mortgage. It's 3.5 million left, and we're going to pay in 5 years $580,000 in interest, and that would lop that whole thing off if we gift it.
I'm opposed to the gifting because of the necessity. We may need the money at some future disaster.
Well, we did Measure Z, our TOT increase in 2012. We've done very well off of it. In the last, I think, 3 years, we've gotten 2.4 million. I believe that.
Your
I think
TOT
it
is
was
4 million.
3.9 was.
No, I think the excess was 2.4 over 3 years.
The 10 to 12% difference.
And one of the pitches on that was the benefits of the residents. And in that, we give to the library, we give to people helping people, we give to the seniors, to the schools, to Theater Fest, to, I can't name them all. But are we covering every single ratepayer in Solvang through our grants? And I don't think so. I don't think so. And are we covering them in varying degrees? Some of the ratepayers really benefit from people helping people or the senior center. Others not. What I would like to see some of this money that we have gotten, if not gifted to the city or to the ratepayers that everyone can benefit from, extremely favorable rates if it's going to be repaid, way under market. And that would be for capital improvements only. It's not subsidizing the operations, the maintenance, any of that. And I understand, fully understand, as you increase your facilities, putting in new wells, you're going to have more operational costs. You're going to have more maintenance costs. You're going to have all the expenses that go with it that need to be taken care of. But I also know that in these rate studies, somewhere buried down in that number is capital improvement. And this is something I would like to see that we can do, is look back at the promise that we made in 2012 on Measure Z and make sure that all the residents, all the ratepayers of Solvang benefit from it.
So I believe we increased from 10% to 12%, and Santa Barbara is now doing the same thing. Is there any sense in a policy where we allocate a percentage of the TOTs, that way it's based on performance, that goes per year into funding CIPs?
I don't believe we can.
Well,
You can do
you
that.
can set a policy.
We can set policy,
It
but
just doesn't bind a future
Right,
council.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you can set a policy exactly as described, which is, that's what goes to fund capital improvement projects. The rate covenant prevents Solvang from using general fund money to subsidize operations and maintenance.
Yeah, but it is policy, so we can't bind a future council or even this council.
Right, you would be able to change your mind later.
We could, it could be an annual thing at, say, budget
So
time.
that's what I'm saying, an annual percentage gift
Yeah,
of the TOT. Because the other thing about that too that I like is that I I think that, we all agree that we need the tourism, but it does have, it is seasonal, and it does have a large demand on our water and wastewater systems. And that demand essentially comes down as a cost to the people that live here. So allocating a portion of our TOT to fund some of our CIPs would be a way of kind of leveling that out a little bit.
Well, whether it's a cost or not, there's an awful lot of benefit that goes along with that cost. So is it a complete negative? I don't think so. It's a drag.
Right.
Yes, on
That's
the
all
full
I'm saying. So this is a way of kind of.
There's a drag on the full potential, but still, I think we're well on the plus side. I think if we decided, if La Conchita decided to come down and stay down for 6 to 8 weeks, I think we would really see what the tourists are doing for our community here. Again, this is something I'd like to see, and this goes back to that promise that we made in 2012, and this has paid off nicely for us.
I don't know that you have to label certain amount of TOT to the water fund. It's we have a positive cash flow in our annual revenues, and we put that in. We say 50% of that in a fund that we can use for other things, and so it accumulates. What we're donating to the community, to the nonprofits, is roughly around $250,000 is all per year. And I believe that we should allocate funds out of our reserves to loan on a line of credit basis to the water company as demand demands it. If the CIP needs a couple $100,000 for a project, i.e. the meters, we loan that money to the water department. They pay us back as some sort of a interest rate, so that we're paying ourselves back rather than borrowing it out on the open market and paying the interest on it.
And that's why I'm saying very favorable rates, if any.
Yeah, sure. But we can't go below what we're getting on leaf. We're getting that 1.4% or 0.8 or whatever it was, 0.7%. We can't go below that, because that's a gifting of funds as I see it. So if we put it up to 1.5% to pay ourselves,
I don't think it's gifting. I think it's we're buying an asset for the city. We're not giving it to anybody. We're not giving it to the. We're giving it to the people of Solvang who are. This is their town. This is their money. We're maybe giving it is not exactly the right word.
I think you and I see it the same way. It's just a matter of degree. Yeah. Any other comments?
My only comment, just regard to giving a very favorable rate. If you just based on our current loan structure of 1.4 million and 2 million, first of all, that can be structured out better, like what you were saying earlier and what I was trying to get to earlier, to also meet our rate agreement. But if we lowered down to a 0.7% loan, and we did it as an interest only for till 2022, then you're looking at, on an annual basis, $24,000 a year there. And since you're not amortizing it in, it's going to drop down the amount that we need to raise our rates. By the time we reach 2022, the last 5 years of our CIPs, as they're currently scheduled, is lower than the first 5 years of our CIPs. So there will be additional monies there to pay back at that point. Our CCWA portion of state water also drops off, $840,000 a year. So at that time, we could more efficiently organize to then amortize the loan and pay it back to the general fund, actual principal.
The
Would-
problem.
Would anybody like to look out of the crystal ball on that CCWA? Yes, it sunsets. What comes in behind it?
That's true. You don't know what their maintenance needs will be at that point, but yeah, it is.
Or replacement, or
Those types of
whatever.
things.
I wouldn't count on, I just really
Not
wouldn't.
fully,
wouldn't-
but
Yeah,
I think
wouldn't
there's
count
going to
on
be
it going away.
some kind of a break there.
If we do a interest-only loan, then we don't have the liquidity we might need for that funds. By paying it back and amortizing it, we're going to have those funds put back into our reserves to be used in case of an emergency.
Right. I was only suggesting that if you did a interest only for the first 5 years to get us.
That's
to-
5
to-
years of non-liquidity.
Yeah, either way. But our financial report shows we're very solid, so.
Of course, until that 7.9 earthquake.
Yeah.
Okay, so if, if we were to commit to a certain dollar amount, to be used when it's needed,
Yeah.
a line of credit,
Right.
that would give the rate study some ammunition that they wouldn't have to be projecting out, especially on the capital improvement end of it, things that might or might not happen at a certain year. And just know that a certain portion of this is covered. Will that help you with your rate studies?
Right. As far as interest-only loan and that type of thing, when you're looking at the CCWA requirement, it's a operating revenue. So that's interest expense is considered a capital expense. So when you're doing the calculation, it's the operating revenues minus the operating expenses, but not subtracting things like interest and capital projects. So that will help your fund balance, but it won't affect the coverage.
Essentially, you're moving
explain
general
that.
fund reserves into your water reserves. You're supplanting them. That's what he's saying. It's not affecting your rate coverage, but it's helping you when you're drawing down your water reserves. You're filling them back in with general fund reserves, if that helps.
Yep.
So,
Heard from Mrs.
I'm just listening to I'm listening to all of your gentlemen with all of your good ideas. Now we just have to put something together.
Do you
Trying
have
to
a
make.
feeling what you'd like to see?
I like the idea of loaning funds to the Water Enterprise Fund. I like that. I like what Hans is saying, that we're benefiting the citizens of the city.
By loaning it
Right.
at a lower interest rate. Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that. Down here?
Definitely yes on that, loaning.
I have to object. I don't like any of these ideas. It's all a bunch of bogus nonsense. It's gift or nothing,
Well, the problem with the gift is.
and no increase on the rate. It's really simple. It's like clear. Are we not on the same page with that? We're gonna just kind of like turn our head and pretend just because we want to try and increase rates? Is that what we're doing?
It's still, we've got to protect our future, the disasters. That's why we put away 50% of our surplus in funding is
What-
for the unknown.
What about a loan with a small gift? Even $500,000 to jumpstart CIPs for replacing meters, that's just throwing water into the.
If there's.
That would actually pay off on the water
Something like
system.
that, if there's a capital improvement project that needs $500,000, that might be an all right kind of deal. And then the other projects be tapered in,
Yeah.
so
It-
that,
If our water meters are under $500,000 to replace everyone's, and we're losing 100 acre feet of water every year in shrinkage, that's almost 200,000 a year right there. It's going to do have a dramatic impact on the next rate study or the next year over year.
do you have the a ballpark number, Matt, on the total meter replacement program? Okay, okay.
Well, how much was it again for all of Alisol?
100,000 was that project.
But then some of that was infrastructure.
75 for how many meters out there?
So do we have someone that can do the math real quick?
That's 10%, he's saying. 10% for 75,000, it'd be 750,000 to do.
Okay. So what if we gifted new meters? And then stop the 100 acre feet of shrinkage going on?
Yeah, it's not going to take care of all of the loss.
yeah.
When we have a water leak, we can't capture that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that definitely would be an option is you use general fund for the water replacement projects, and we could expedite that
Well,
process.
that could reduce the numbers we have to charge for rate increase. We could reduce our rate increase.
Exactly. Well, you wouldn't see it right away. It would come with time.
Well,
We
you're
have to re-
actually going to increase your revenue because your meters will read more accurate.
That's- yeah.
So you're actually going to gain revenue on that
Right.
side.
We have to remember that this water rate increase is a maximum number. We can always drop back. One year we could charge 4 or 3% rather than the 5.5% based on revenue.
On how we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that if we reduced our shrinkage, that would increase our revenue. And then the coming year, when it's reevaluated, we might not have to, raise as much as what we thought we did.
And we've done that in the past.
Yeah.
We have, yeah.
So, but I'm just making the example of reducing shrinkage to increase revenue and therefore stabilizing the percent increases.
Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just did a quick kind of back of the phone calculation. It should be a little under $1 million to replace all the rest of the meters in the city. So
And about how
$500,000
much staff time goes into that every,
Is
Quite a,
Well,
Well, you mean
the
to
staff
read
time we
them-
save
to read them or
is
the-
a 3-day, we read for 4 days. So it's, the staff time is 4 days a month that
4
they're reading.
4 days,
Yeah,
okay.
of the main crew. But yeah, it's not a
Right.
huge staff time savings other than the
yeah.
read, yeah.
But as some of these other capital improvements come online, like Deuce was saying earlier, we're gonna need more staff time.
But it
to-
gives them those 4 days to do something else.
Which makes us more efficient somewhere else.
exactly, and we just put a new well online. We're working on another project that takes time. They got to go out and
Right.
replenish the chemicals and check things and read the meter.
So you could be doing more important things like that than running around and tripping
Right.
and falling and then having a claim against the city for something else over getting someone's.
Can we
Right.
give direction that that we fund out of the general fund reserves the meter change out as a funding source with no repay, and then the balance of the difference between that and the 3.4 million that we needed, we could loan out to ourselves.
There you go. Yeah, that would have the most dramatic impact.
Yeah, and that would affect the water rates because we're.
So I've been thinking about our capital improvement program, and the one slide that showed the rate coverage dropping, and I think it was 20 and 21 or 19 and 20. So I think if I'm not mistaken, that's in part because of our River Wells project, which is a really big project. So if we move that out, if we move that out 1 year or 2 years and put in the meter replacement project, I don't know if you want to do that. But
I think we could still leave it the same and not push things out further if we do what Jim was just saying, which is gift fire that off right away and reduce our shrinkage, and then let everything continue, and then we just loan at a very favorable rate to the water fund as needed to meet our rate coverage.
Matt, realistically, on the date of this Riverwell project, seems to me it's been pushing back for quite a while. And so are these dates even realistic as we speak right now?
We hope we're
It's
getting
getting it through
close.
Sacramento.
We
and
hope we're getting
getting
close.
through-
recently, we've been saying that things just keep getting, dragging out.
Yeah, so it's,
with
it's
the
going to
amendment
happen,
permit.
but I don't think we can say for sure that it's going to happen in 17, 18, or,
Right. No, we certainly can't say for certain. There's too many variables.
So that'd be just a
outside
thing
of
where
our
at
control.
that year, if it doesn't happen, we readjust
bumps
don't-
it back.
You wouldn't
It
need
bumps
to
it
raise
back,
your
yeah.
We
rates.
we just don't borrow the money.
Right.
The money's sitting there.
Yeah,
So
I mean-
we have no cost of borrowing.
I think that's a really efficient way of doing this, and then we're only doing it as it's needed.
Yeah.
It's going to stabilize rates the most.
There's definitely possibility that Riverwell's the actual design and construction of that could push back a year or two, just.
Can we have somebody craft something like that so that we can fold this into the
Well-
rate study?
So I think one tier for all, so same meter charges. You also get rid of the outer city, 1.5 penalty. And then same volumetric for everyone, and get rid of these tiers. And then if we reduce meter charges by 10% and adjust the volumetric accordingly. So an example, that would be today, our current target revenue forecast metric would be 4,715,000. And based on a one-tier system and the volume that we sold last year, or in this study here, if we charged our current meter rate and a volumetric rate of 3.73, we would still hit that exact same 4.714 million. If you reduce down by 10%, then it's going to drop the meter charges slightly. So example, for the very base charge, $75.43 would reduce down to a $67.89, but then our volumetric would have to raise to 4.43. So that gives a break to the people that are really trying to reduce their water usage and use a very small amount. They get a break in their fixed meter charge, and then the higher users are going to pay a little bit more over time, with the volumetric rate bumping up a little bit. So it's the same blend as, let's see, what was the scenario where you guys reduced our,
I think it's scenario 4 with a 60-40 split. Is that what I heard
yeah,
you say?
oh, okay, so that's essentially doing the 60/40.
No, but he's changing 4 to.
I'm changing it slightly,
Yeah,
but essentially that's, 60/40, because the other concern is if you try to reduce fixed meter charges by too much, volumetric goes up, and then the really high users could start finding ways to not use as much water. I mean, I'm just trying to see how much of an impact economically it's going to have on your high users, because looking through the all other users Excel spreadsheet, there's some people that really use a lot, so that volumetric will really start killing them at some point. So all I'm saying is if you shift too much, like 50% fixed revenue, and then the rest on volume, your higher volume users are going to really be struggling suddenly overnight, and it could cause unforeseen impacts on our revenue later on. So I guess my methodology would be to reduce meter rates, the fixed meter charge, by a smaller amount, and then we could always reconsider later on eking them down, but I don't know if I just do a real hard swing on that.
I'm hesitant on the tier situation. That's something that I brought in. And what I'm thinking about is a little old lady living down on Fifth Street somewhere on a fixed income. And I want to make sure that this group of people, the lower end, the lower users, that is equitable to them. There are people out there that are using 1 or 2 units of water off their meter. They pay I don't know, $110 just to start with. And their consumption charge, volumetric, is about $3.50.
On a three-quarter.
So, I don't mind seeing the meter charges go down. Because I really think that, there is some, and I understand demand, the potential demand to the system. And that's what this is all based on. I totally understand that. But I also know a little old lady down there paying $110 before she gets a drop of water out of the spigot. And that includes sewer charges too. And you've got to take a look at that volumetric, because that also translates into what she flushes down, the impact on the sewer plant. So it's not a perfect world out there. We can't fix everything. We can't cover every scenario. But there are some people out there I want to make sure are protected, and that is that retired class, the ones that are, a lot of them are struggling to stay here when they have been they've served this community for a lifetime. I don't want to say we owe something to them, but I think we do. I think we do.
So would a 10% reduction in the fixed meter charge provide that kind of benefit? It's about
it would help.
$7-8, I think.
Yeah, it would definitely help.
Okay.
It would definitely help.
So you like my concept of...
Yeah, because what I'm looking at is, the ones that are, in this lower, maybe up to 5 or 6 units. She might want to have some little flowers she'd like to keep alive during this whole thing, and make her life good. But
Just can I make a comment? I think if you look at the scenario 3 option, it kind of, I think, gets to what everybody's talking about here. Scenario 3 has the least amount of increase on the volumetric, as well as lowering the meter rates for everybody. So it does lower them almost 10%. If you look at even just the first year, it goes from like 75 to, I think, down to 60 to 71%, or to $71. So they do get
Can we
lower
bring
on-
scenario 3 up on the...
Sure.
Is that, that is scenario, okay. So,
And I think what
So-
you're trying to get
so-
at here is the increased amount. You could change the rate increase each year depending on the needs of the capital. And so I think what we're trying to say is, one, you could do and vote on scenario 3. You like the fixed versus variable, the 60% and the 40%. It has the least amount of impact on the rate increase going up, and it has a big increase on the meter rate going down, which is, I think, what you're trying to accomplish. And then I think you can decide, each year with the rate increase, okay, what capital projects are coming up at that point in time? What are our needs, and how are we going to meet the rate covenant at that time? So I kind of think rate 3 gets to what everybody wants to do. That does involve using the loan or a gift, which you could make the decision at that point in time. But I think right now, to at least get you started, that 5.5%, or that, at least getting that scenario down in place, would be a good starting point. And then it's basically every year, 5% would be, or 5.5% would be the maximum rate increase, but it could certainly be lower, and it could involve, at that point in time, using a gift, using a loan of the general
Right.
fund. Kind of-
so I agree with that, because when I run that here, this is actually pretty close to what I was just suggesting, which is the 10% reduction in the fixed meter charge, which then increases your volumetric, which is what we see here. I guess what I'm just saying is maybe getting rid of the tiers, and then also outside users, not penalizing them, because that's 1.5 times. That means someone that's a little bit outside the city is going to pay their fixed meter charge is going to, instead of $100, if it was a, let's say, 3/4. What is the 3/4 currently at? It's like 102. So they now pay over $150 a month just for their their fixed charge, right?
Yeah, that was a
And then the
conscious decision.
volumetric-
Yeah, the council made that decision because they're not
Right.
in the city limits.
And I
So, yeah.
understand that. I'm just trying to get down to just no one bickering about, well, I pay this amount and this. So if we did one for all, commercial, residential, outside city,
Well, all of the scenarios do get rid of that outside user charge.
Perfect,
So
yeah.
that's done. But I think the issue is going with the tier or non-tier. The concern I would have with the non-tiers and just going one for all is whether or not you're going to be able to make that rate covenant. And so they've shown through their calculations that doing a certain amount of increase every year, we're going to make that rate covenant. That would be my concern is just, and it's a much higher price point. It's at $5. So you're doing a dramatic rate increase if you go with,
but with the tier system, you're going to charge more people that go over the 1,200 cubic feet, which encourages them to actually not use water, which decreases our revenue.
but that's why we're maintaining a balance of 60/40.
We also have the
I
state
understand
mandate
that.
of
No, I just-
conservation, so we do
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah, but a fixed rate for all kind of adjusts that volumetric rate to make you want to stay down, and then for those users that don't, it just helps them out.
That could certainly be another scenario, but I think they've tried to do that in that scenario 4, and they've shown the increase you're going to need to make that rate covenant. and it's
Because we also have
pretty dramatic.
families out there that are bigger families that 1,200 cubic feet is like gone like that the second a couple of kids get in the bath.
Well, I think they're also looking at, that break point. When you look at the number of users and then percentage of bills that are under 12 versus over 12, I think that's where they finally,
Yeah.
they came up with that break point.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the best amount of good for the most amount of users.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with that, it's also just, it's the size family, so how are we justifying that? And then we also have, size your lot. Some people, have a larger size lot, so we're gonna penalize them for, I'm just trying to break away from the, well, I pay more because I have this and now my trees are dying, or, kind of argument. We could run them both in parallel and just see what the numbers look like. So basically, if we agree that we like scenario 3, I also like that it's the one with the gift. And since it seems like we got a little bit of a consensus on maybe gifting the meter CIPs and then loaning as needed, then maybe if we pursued it like that and then just came back with a scenario with a tier and without a tier. Because that makes it pretty straightforward.
Well, I think what we're doing here is we're leading into a workshop, correct?
Well, we were hoping we'd have some resolution to bring back a final plan for us, a notice of intention to do the rate
Okay.
increase.
Okay.
So, yeah, our workshop was actually last
We
meeting.
had a workshop.
Well,
But you
bear-
can always have more workshops.
Yeah,
I mean,
bear
that's
in
not-
mind, we can bring it back, and with those,
Changes.
Right.
those different things to look at, and then you could, if you were able to, based on the information that's provided to you then, if you made a decision as to which one you wanted to be in a proposed rate increase, we could do that work and be ready to roll. But that presupposes that the information that comes back to you is, good enough for you to be able to make that decision.
Do we have an agreement that we can gift the CIP project for the meters, and then dole out the balance of the 3.4 over time as required?
Or do a line of credit.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Do a line of credit.
What do we,
Credit
what do we
kind of
just,
thing.
what do we
As
call
needed
it?
for,
needed.
to
Yeah.
stabilize rates.
Right.
But
Yeah,
it's-
what we could say is a $3.4 million line of credit, with terms to be determined at that time. That way, if we decide we want to take part of that 3.4, gift it, we can.
Well, first,
It gives us flexibility.
if we
Rather
gift,
than sitting here trying to make policy right now.
Well, if we take the $1 million off the table, then we only need 2.4.
yeah, that's what I was just saying. So if we gift a portion first, it's going to reduce the amount that we're going to have to loan as needed later.
And that'll reduce the rates.
And this rate study is based on immediately taking out those loans at 5%. So,
Well, if we put it at 3.4 with terms to be determined, one of the terms on the million could be a gift.
There you go.
Well, as long as that would affect the water rates, because that $1 million is going to come out of the overall cost to us. So it'll be 2.4 rather than 3.4 million that's going to affect the water rates. So if we just set.
Well,
It's not going to be that clear.
Yeah.
Because your 3.4 million included some meter replacement, but not the entire meter replacement. And I'm trying to avoid math again. But since it included some and not the entire, we can't just take the 1 million of the entire and subtract that from the 3.4 million, because you're actually only subtracting whatever the sum was going to cost in that.
But could we just request staff to evaluate a gift option to, because Matt also needs to work the numbers on what it would take for the meters anyway. So you come back with, I think we already like the idea of gifting the meters and doing that right away, getting that off the table. And then after that, we just need to figure out on an as-needed basis that we're going to loan from the general fund as needed and then you guys can come back with with how that can work.
What they could come, I'm sure that we could collectively do the actual math. So
There you
that
go.
if there's going to be a gift from the general fund to pay for the entire meter project, your staff will then be able to tell you how much that's going to reduce the 3.4 million.
Right.
And then
you could look at
and you
gifting
could-
as needed on a certain interest rate amount that we
Right,
talked about
what
tonight.
you'd do is you'd draft, in my mind, the best way to do it from a legal perspective would be to draft something we could call a line of credit, whatever name we gave to it, that said, this maximum amount will be loaned at this particular rate. It's only going to bear interest if it's actually
There you go.
expended.
Yeah.
And then in the future,
That way, if
you
we don't
or
even need the
another-
3.4
right.
loan.
You or
then-
another council may decide it's appropriate to use some other general fund money on this particular capital project now. And we won't have to have the water
Right.
enterprise fund to borrow it.
So we'll gift the meters and then we'll do that. Okay.
Now,
Now,
then
craft
what are-
that-
what are
craft that
the-
motion.
that.
Would you craft that
Well,
motion
so
for me?
the first
You don't have to
piece
make a
is-
motion tonight, you're just
well,
giving us
yeah.
direction.
The first piece is we have a 5.5% increase for 5 years.
Yes.
Do we have a consensus that that's what you want to see in the
That'll be the maximum increase.
maximum, up to.
And that's
5.5?
scenario 3.
Well, that's the
Sort of.
next. So then.
Sort of.
So then the ratio variable to fixed is scenario 3, is that what we're at?
46, 60/40.
Yeah.
And the tier structure, that's the other, is it a single tier or is it
Let's
two-tier?
get a reading on both.
Did your,
Let's have the non-tier and the tier brought back to us.
Single
Run
tier.
those in parallel. So that
Okay,
we
so
would
single
just-
tier, but what is the 2-tier you want? Because we had one at 16,
Oh, the
we had one at
and the-
12.
I think the 12 is appropriate. I use 16 myself, but, it's only fair to drop
Well,
it back to
12
12.
is okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a majority
I'm
to
okay
say
with it.
12?
That's
I'm
fine.
okay at the 12.
All right, 12 tier, scenario 3, and then,
No tier.
and no tier, and then $1 million towards meters or whatever that.
Whatever that
we're
is
using
to-
as a
yeah.
gift, and then a line of credit of up to 3.4 million,
Minus the 100,
Yeah.
minus the.
minus the
yeah.
cost of meter replacement.
And what are we going to base our interest rate off of?
I think they were assuming 1% already.
So could we go to 0.7%?
Or whatever the LIFO rate is.
That's what we've done in the past. is
Yeah,
leave-
the problem
Leaf rate.
will be that the leaf rate is actually variable, but so it'd be better, you may just decide to pick what the current leaf rate is.
And then
as
we
the
could
rate
adjust
that
it on a
you-
yearly basis if it lowers?
if you-
or-
Yes,
Yeah, you could just say it at leaf rate, and then
Yes.
we get that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Essentially, that's the loss in revenue you would have had by not investing it, so.
Right, then we still have a disaster cushion.
and I just want to be a lawyer for a second. We're using the word gift, not in the legal sense. It's, you, except for the rate covenant, you can spend general fund money on any purpose that you want. So it's not a gift as in the sense of gift of public funds. It doesn't create that legal issue.
No, this is
So-
financing the CIP
Right.
out of the general fund.
Okay, and then what are we going to do with the meter rates?
I think the.
The tier scenario
that we
three.
already talked about the scenario here, which is a,
68?
the 60/40.
60/40. You go from 70/30 to 60/40.
Okay, so is that what is listed here in scenario 3?
Yes.
So that's one of the higher rates that we have. There's one that's 75/43, and the others are 61/58. I'm just talking about the 5/8.
What page you on, Joni?
Good question. 23 or 150-something?
150-something?
When we were discussing scenario 3, it was from the slides.
Okay.
If you look at the example in the staff
It's
report that
still
I wrote,
68.
for an 3/4 inch meter, 8 cubic feet use, scenario 3 would be 135.81. Scenario 2 would be 131, scenario 1's 131, and scenario 4 is 133. So it is the highest by a few dollars, 2 over 4 and $4 over scenarios 1 and 2, compared to a current of 140. So it is dropping that meter fee a little bit.
But dropping the meter there's a difference between what we're paying now and what the meter's gonna be, which is in effect paying, they're getting I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah.
The lower users will see a higher benefit in the meter drop.
They're actually
Exactly,
getting
which is
two
what
free
Hans
units.
is saying, is
Right.
this helps those lower users.
So, and I like this one because it's basically dropping the meter rate by, what, 10%? And then we can see how the revenue does, and if we feel like we can rely a little less off of the fixed meter charges, we could look at dropping it again. Because I'm just pointing out that if you, every time you reduce that fixed meter charge, it actually has a pretty dramatic effect on the volumetric.
Well, you mean the increase to the volumetric? If you drop the
Yes.
meter, yeah, it is.
So if you,
Same revenue.
so if you,
And those high users will suffer from that, the higher
yeah.
consumption, higher
So what I'm
consumption.
saying is just, reducing by 10% is gonna, on the meter charge, is gonna bump up our volumetric rate. But if we go too much with that, I'm just wondering what impacts we might run into a year from now.
Yeah, one of my questions, and this is going back to the last 3 years. We have, we've watched our annual water use go down like it was supposed to. How much is it going to come back? How much landscaping has, and these are these high users that ripped out lawns. Huh?
Some of them are putting it back in. I see sod trucks.
Well, if they want to put them back in, that's their thing. But they spend a lot of money taking it out, so I'm thinking that a lot of lawns are not coming back in. They are what they are. We're not going to sell water like we sold in 2010 or 11.
So in this spreadsheet, there's a growth factor of 0.5. Can you just briefly explain to me what drives that?
Right, that's a conservative estimate of your growth. I think overall growth in the U.S. population is about 0.7% projected. So
Okay.
it's a bit conservative for you guys.
All right. And then also just the last little thing, with regard to Skip Mesa kind of coming online, how many homes have not started, or are not in this study, essentially? Because they're all going to pay a monthly.
Connection fee wise, I think we're down to about a half a dozen, or no, 4 or 5 that haven't paid a connection fee.
Mhm.
You've got, I believe, 14 vacant and then 4 lots unbuilt yet. So you probably got
So 20 homes maybe that
Something
are
like
going to
that.
come
It's
on.
not gonna
and
be a
they're
huge
going to be paying
number.
the fixed meter charge. We're going to get those connection fees, but those will drop off. But now
Right,
we're going
yeah.
to convert
They'll come
over
in
to-
and use water and pay the meter fee, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But there's about 20 of those.
Do you have your direction?
Well, I don't know if you want to do a motion on that. Do we need a motion, you think?
You don't need
or-
a motion if staff is happy with knowing what they're supposed to bring
You'd like
back.
us to bring back that for analysis
Okay.
with those two options, the main being a two-tier and a no-tier, with the other all common.
Tell me you're satisfied.
Got it.
Okay, we're going to item 8.
What do you think, Sandra? Come on, you're the number cruncher, you know how this is
I
going to
wrote
work.
that she put scenario 3 by her name, so that's,
Well, I do think scenario 3 kind of accomplishes what you want. It basically sets a maximum amount that you would determine every year, just like what you're proposing. The issue is really if you want to see the analysis on no tier versus 0 to 12. So if you want to bring that back and look at it, my only concern, like I said, is whether or not we're going to meet the rate covenant, and how high does that minimum amount have to go for everybody in order to meet that rate covenant? So that's what the analysis will show when we bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay, on to item 8. I'd like to suggest that we use our privilege of readjusting the agenda just to drop this item 8 off of the agenda, period, because we're going to be spending the money in water, and that we can't afford, I believe, the $1 million to loan out or to invest when we're going to need that $1 million to help with the water department.
Just one comment, though. The policy itself, one of the recommendations in the staff report was to adopt the policy, with the changes.
Okay.
That is a requirement we need to do every year to
All right.
be.
Okay, on to item 8, Mr. Clerk.
Item 8, investment policies and options.
Staff report. Thank you for your presentation. We'll see you again. Staff report.
Mayor and City Council. Sandra Featherston, your Director of Administrative Services. Tonight I'm going to talk about our investment policy in the staff report. I've mentioned that each year the city needs to adopt a resolution basically filing and accepting the investment policy. I had a few minor changes this year in the policy related to some guidelines put out by the Local Debt Advisory Commission, and that was related to the table in the actual document that shows the allowable investments. I made a few other changes based on that document, prudent investor versus prudent person, just a few minor things. You've got the highlighted one with the markup in your policy, and then also a clean version as well. So one of the recommendations would be to adopt that policy and have that on file. And then the second one was to look at potentially investing money. So there were kind of two components with this. One is to move forward with investing, and I had suggested about $1 million to start. And we would do, probably 4 CDs or agency bonds under the $250,000 FDIC limit so that they'd be insured. And just one comment about that, not all of that money would necessarily be general fund money. We have other funds that have available cash that is all invested in LAIF. So we would pick from some of those pools that extra cash that may not be needed by one of the particular funds to do that investing. So it wouldn't all necessarily be general fund money that would be sent and put into these investments at one time. So just a comment about that. The other component of the staff report was requesting the use and approval of the city manager to sign an agreement to work with a broker that we have received information on and vetted, and we've had positive recommendations for. It's called Multi-Bank Securities. I realize they're not local, but they are a firm that deals primarily with municipalities, which I think for our first go at this would be a very good idea. This is not my forte necessarily, is doing these investments, and so using someone who's working with other cities on a regular basis, I think would benefit us in terms of the experience in starting out. They also offer a software platform that allows us to not only buy from whatever securities and bonds that they may have available, but we can also pick from local banks. And the nice part about that tool is that we could see everything all in one place. We could buy it from one source, and then the reporting, which is what I have to do, would be a lot easier because it encapsulates all of the different investments in one location. So there was kind of 3 parts to the recommendation. One is to receive and file the staff report. The investment policy with the changes. The second one is to authorize use of multi-bank securities, and the third was to move forward with approving the investment of the $1 million. in light of the most recent agenda item, I can understand if you'd want to maybe lessen that investment amount potentially too. So, and with that, I'm available for questions.
There are questions of the staff report?
So I guess my first question is, based on the prior direction we gave with regard to water rates and gifting as needed, do we still have money that we could safely invest?
We do. I'd probably recommend at this point, maybe just starting out with $500,000 and
Okay.
putting it in, 2 to 3 CDs to just see if we can get a little bit better return on LAIF, try it out, and look at our cash flow. And depending on where you come back with the water rates, it could be $500,000, $750,000, maybe not the whole million. I mean, we do have quite a bit of cash that's sitting there. So like I
And the
said, it wouldn't all
terms,
be
you
general
can,
fund.
you can choose the terms. So if you know we're not even going to need the money for 2 years projected, then you wouldn't exceed a 2-year.
Right, I wouldn't recommend going over 3 years, but yes,
Right.
we certainly have that option. The best return, when they're doing that kind of table there, is when you're laddering them, so you have an 18-month, a 1-year,
Right.
2-year. And so we could try to do something similar so that we're always getting that excess cash and reinvesting it.
So that maximizes the performance of our money in the meantime, even
It
though
does.
we could still borrow from the general fund for the water later.
Yes.
So I guess my other thing was, it allows you to pick local, is there any impact on trying to keep our investments local to stir our own economy, or sending the money off to China?
Well, we wouldn't be doing that.
I'm just-
These have to be certificates of deposit or
I just wanted to
US
see a couple
agency
smiles.
bonds. So, no, the policy is very specific about what we can invest in. It's whether or not you want to spend $250,000 and buy a CD from a local bank or one that's being out there that might have better interest. I mean, there's kind of competing goals here. One is to keep it local, and the other one is to maximize the return on the money. So for the amount of effort to implement this and to do the record keeping, I want to maximize the money and try, my other thought about this was, let's say we do it for a year, we see what kind of return we're getting, and then when we've got a little bit more experience at this, I'm happy to move to, we can use another broker, we could, buy more CDs locally. I think we have a lot of options there, but my recommendation to use MBS was because they will bring an expertise to us and give us a platform that will allow us to manage it easier for the first go-around with this.
Okay.
Any other questions? How, on these investments, we don't have to make snap decisions, do we?
Oh, no.
Okay,
No.
then that leads me up to this skeptical mind I have about experiences of Bell, California, and other cities of those kinds of things. I'm wondering if it would be possible for signatories to be the staff and also members of the council, city council, as an oversight sort of a thing.
Well, part of the change in the policy that I've provided is that I would be giving you a monthly report of any type of investment transactions. So, and I wouldn't do the investment without coming, I think, with the council report first, just like I've done here, where I'm saying, can you authorize us for $1 million? And you would allow me to work with the broker to pick the 4 best investments within the allowed investment options, which would be, I'd go with the CDs or the agency bonds, the most secure possible. And so, certainly we can do what you want, but I'm just saying, I think the control there is that, both Brad and I would be the signers on the account, and we would be the ones to verify that.
That's this year. 10 years from now, you may not be employees, and we may pick the wrong kind of and either will Roy. And we may pick the wrong staff in the future that could really upset us. So that's was my thinking, is if we set some sort of an idea where there's oversight by the council on the investments, either before they occur or.
Well, you would have that definitely after they occur, because
Yeah,
you'll be
right.
getting a monthly report if I do a
By
transaction.
that
That would
time-
allow you what we've purchased.
By that time, the horse is out of the barn.
Well, true, but again, with 2
I
signatures
kind of
on
like
the
the idea
account.
of having us have a little oversight, because we could decide to drive things a little more locally or externally to,
I don't want to go into the
Or-
detail. I just
but-
want to say, well, yeah, you made this investment in let's say a large corporation, but not Joe's Pool Hall down the street. That's what we want to keep you away from, is Joe's Pool Hall, but we want you to get you in good solid investments, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but
And
then
that's
you-
not
then you
just
have
you.
competing-
Remember, that's down the line.
You
I
You have
understand.
competing council members then. Then who's to say what's what? And then now you have a big mucked up thing that, like, the whole point is to give her the authority and trust in whoever we hire, and our vetting process of hiring the right people. that's where that comes from. We have them in place to do their job and have the best interest for the city, just as we do.
And realize these are, I think she's talking maximum of 250,000 at a pop. So your liability is, so.
Yeah, and Bell wasn't the best example to pick, because that's where the council members were lining their own pockets.
I just
what I
want to say
think,
that
yeah.
I agree with Councilman Zimmerman on that. That was going to be my comment, that,
Okay, let's-
we hire the best.
This week.
Well, I would hope that, I would hope.
Maybe
Well,
maybe
anytime
a
I were to
standard, the
leave-
policy is if we have a staff change, that's
Yes,
reevaluated.
and well, that's the thing too. As soon as the staff member changes, just like when we get a new council member, their signatories on the bank accounts. I mean, you've authorized Brad and I to sign the check. So it's the same kind of concept. As soon as I were to leave, the MBS, the multi-bank securities, would require a signatory change, and that would be updated. Maybe the council at that point in time would rather that the mayor be a signatory on the account, for example. But remember, this is an electronic platform, so I don't think it would be very easy for me to, get the rates one day, meet with you the next day, pick from these, and then go buy it. I mean, just from a
That's what I was-
practical
that's what I was
standpoint, I think it would be a little too cumbersome.
That's why I was asking about the snap decision sort of thing.
Well, it's
know,
not
if
a
it-
snap decision, it's, getting a list of the things, but if I want to buy it, when the rates come up and when they meet a certain criteria, I think we
My
want
other
to
thought
try and
is
go that
Orange
way.
County, that was another, it's another one besides Bell, that's.
That was derivatives.
And that's where the treasurer got in bed with the brokerage, because he was trusted.
Yes. Yeah, I spent better part of 5 years helping with the litigation. I wasn't a big part, I just represented one of the cities that wouldn't give in.
So in your resolution where you select Sandra and I as the signatories, we could add a line in that resolution that says any changes to this must be approved by the city council. Then you would have that
All right.
that
That's
oversight
why
of
I
it
threw
when
it
that
out for
person changes.
discussion. If there-
Okay, do you both sign or only one has to sign? It says independently perform the prescribed privileges.
Right, I did ask them about that because it's it's electronic, that we would both have the ability, but within the office, we have to have our own internal controls set up, and so Brad would review anything that I was going to
I
do.
just I don't want to have to come down and see you in Mexico. I mean, that would.
Not gonna happen, but
So what's the will of the council? Is the added line to the signatories that,
I just think we
Well,
change
what-
it. I just think we change it as time progresses. I don't think we have to do it now.
You do review your investment policy annually
okay,
also.
all right. I'm willing to bend. Just wanted to throw that out for a thought.
And then, well,
Because
as a
I'm-
practical matter, any of the institutions require that the signature authority be granted by resolution of the city council. So it's going to happen anyway. If you have to change who's authorized for signature, there will be something, most often it comes back on a consent calendar, but those changes always come before the city council.
I just don't want to see any of our staff in orange, that's all. Well,
You'll
It
be in
happens,
Mexico.
So.
I think the balance and check is still there, because
Okay,
it's
all
gonna,
right.
it's gonna come back. and-
Somebody make a message then. Make a
I'll
message then.
Make a motion to accept as is.
Public
Oh,
comment.
I'll second.
Wait a minute,
Wait,
public
wait,
comment.
time.
There's no public here.
Fred, you got a minute.
You all may
You
need.
owe us a minute, but
Yeah.
I'll give you 30 seconds of it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you much, I appreciate that. Members of the city council. All right, some of the hidden things in this agenda item are: one, the bank. As I have pointed out in the past, who does all the data processing for 9 banks, including the one that you use, Montecito Bank and Trust? Who does that?
Each do their own.
No, it's all done by Union Bank. They're the ones that generate the tapes.
Well, that's a recent innovation because I worked with the banks in my previous life, and they did, and I was in the computer companies that sold computers to these guys.
IBM, I know, great guys.
So-
Okay, now, the point is, somebody needs to see, you've beaten us up, what's the best return? What's the best bang for your buck? You need to go out to some other banks, like Union Bank, and say, what kind of effort can you do for us? What kind of freebies can you do for us? What, it's just like Waste Management. Look what they've done for you. What are the freebies they've given you? That's what somebody needs to negotiate with them. See, that's the very first thing. Why do we have our banks? Why are we set on Montecito Bank? That's my first concern. My second concern is what you thought about here using MBS. And here's back to local again. Why aren't we using a local place? Like Edward Jones, maybe. I have personal investments through them. And let me share that with you. Muni bonds. Muni bonds. The worst muni bond I'm getting is 4%. The best I'm getting is 12%. But that was bonds that were purchased in 2008, in 2010. And right at the bust area. They were really good. So again, all the eggs in one basket. Why aren't you looking to see what else is out there within the policy? You're doing this for the people of Solvang, not for the city, for the people of Solvang. Because it sounds like, it comes across when you say for the city, it sounds like the city is only who's right here, who works here. Staff, city council, but not for the residents. So I can only ask you to please consider, can your investment policy be changed if it has to be, to look at someone like Edward Jones and look at the safest thing in the world is muni bonds. You know what the worst thing they can do to a muni bond? Call it. Instead of a 2026, they could call it this year if they wanted to. I had one that was called this year. And yeah, I thought it was going to go at least another 10 years. So that's what I ask you to look into, please.
Thank you, Fred. Is there anybody else in the public who wishes to speak? We'll bring it back to the council for discussion, decision. Is there any other comment based on what Fred said?
I think there's some merit in the local aspect, which is exactly what I said earlier, but I don't know what kind of relationships are possible there. You're also chasing after FDIC insured.
Correct. Our policy is very specific requirements, and these are based on best practices about what a brokerage needs to provide to us to be eligible to work with. So I have contacted Montecito Bank and Trust and worked with their advisors. They're getting me that information to use as a potential broker. Again, I would much prefer to do them going forward after we kind of get something established and we figure out the process of how this works. But yes, they're a potential. There are other brokerages, and I'm willing to look at them, but MBS specializes in municipalities. They work with other cities. They know the constraints that we have in terms of the investments that we can make because they are focused solely on cities and what they can and are allowed to invest in by the U.S. government code. Our policy does allow us to invest in local banks. That doesn't require the same amount of vetting, but that would be just like me walking into Montecito Bank and Trust and saying, you know, give me a CD, and the best they can do is 1% for 2 years. So, like I said, it's a little bit of a dilemma because you're trying to maximize the return versus giving business to the local businesses. I think the best strategy for us right now is to try and figure out a way to maximize some funds, use a company that works, a brokerage that works with municipalities so we can get some better investment. Again, this is not my forte. They will provide
Establish a portfolio and then start
and then once we
massaging it.
kind of figure out how this works going forward, and I have a better understanding of what kind of things need to be in place with maybe some of the local banks, then I'm happy to do that at the direction of the council. I mean, I'll do what you want, but this is just based on what I've researched and what I feel might be the best approach for us going forward.
I don't think we're locked in on anything as far as having to be with one brokerage firm or
Correct.
one group forever. I think there, you know, what you're telling me, it can be very fluid if need be.
When I surveyed
And
the
as your
others,
experience comes up, we can make changes. So I think for all of this, there are these potentials.
yes. And other cities that I surveyed, they are, some of them do use multiple brokers. They probably have someone who can do all the reporting full-time, but, you know, they are using multiple brokers, and they probably have a much bigger investment portfolio. Again, we're talking about maybe $1 million. So, you know, I'm just trying to start small, see if we can get a little bit of success, earn a little bit more money than we can in LAIF, and go from there.
Yeah. And, you know, what we're planning on doing in the future, I like the latter effect in that we can come out gradually or at specific times. I like that option very much.
We can break the ladder if we need to.
Yeah, but it costs,
For liquidity, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, you can, you just,
We won't need
but
to.
it generally
penalty.
costs to do that. But at least there are avenues out when, you know, somewhere. So I'll make a motion to go with staff recommendation.
Second.
You've seconded it?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Deuce,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jameson,
Yes.
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. Next item on the agenda is council member reports. Now, I owe you one from last time.
Well, I will take yours standing up. I need to
Well,
stretch.
And I want you to be aware that next Thursday is another SBCAG, APCD meeting. I think that it is the report for February. And I think, and you've all received copies of the action that we took. Was there any questions in your mind of those actions?
Not a single one.
Well, then that case, that answers that one. Then the APCD one was election of the chair and approval of the minutes. The administrative items were, the only other thing that was significant, APCD, was specific resolutions for various boards, and where our next meeting is next month, this month, 16th. Is there any other committee reports? Nobody had any. Okay, we go into closed session. Would you read the item, please?
Government Code Subdivision A, Section 54956.9, existing litigation, amendment to permit 15878 in front of the State Water Resource Control Board.
Let's meet in there in about 5 minutes.